Welcome to the Nordic Skald. Tonight we journey into one of Iceland's oldest and most haunting folk tales, the story of Jóra. Born in a land of fire, ice, and endless winter nights, Jóra's tale has been told around hearth fires for generations. It is a story of pride, fate, and the darkness that can awaken within the human soul. So settle in, dim the lights, and let the ancient shadows of Iceland carry you back to a time when the boundary between legend and reality was thin as mist upon the mountains. This is the story of Jóra. Jóra of Jóraklif, an Icelandic folk legend. Chapter 1. The Road Across Hell Heath. There are places in Iceland where the earth remembers. The old people knew this. They spoke of it by the fire when winter storms battered the turf walls and the darkness pressed against the windows like a living thing. They knew that not every path was meant to be walked after sunset. Not every mountain welcomed travelers. Not every lonely valley belonged entirely to the living. One such place lay far from the sea, beyond the farms and the churchyards, where the wind swept unhindered across black lava fields and barren heath. The place was called Jóraklif. Even now, few speak its name without lowering their voice, for it was there that Jóra lived. Or perhaps it would be truer to say that it was there she still waits. No one can say exactly when the story began. Some claimed she had once been a farmer's daughter, beautiful and proud. Others swore she had never been entirely human at all. A few whispered that dark powers had marked her before birth, and that the shadow of her fate had followed her from the cradle. Whatever the truth may be, all stories agree on one thing. Jóra became something terrible. Travelers disappeared upon the mountain roads, horses returned riderless, shepherds vanished among the rocks, and when winter covered the land in snow and silence, people claimed they could hear a woman's voice carried upon the wind. Not singing, not crying, calling. Calling from the cliffs above the road, calling for those foolish enough to answer. Many did. Few were seen again. The night our tale begins, the first snow of autumn had already fallen across the highlands. The moon hung low and pale above the mountains. A cold wind swept through the valleys, and a lone rider urged his horse onward across the ancient track, leading toward Jóraklif. His name has long been forgotten. But his fear has not. For before the night was over, he would come face to face with the most feared woman in all of Iceland. And the mountain itself would bear witness. The horse stumbled suddenly. The rider tightened the reins and looked ahead. At first he thought the shape upon the road was a boulder. Then it moved, slowly, deliberately. And in the pale moonlight he saw the outline of a woman standing alone upon the mountain path, waiting. The rider pulled his horse to a halt. For a moment neither man nor beast moved. The wind swept across the heath, carrying with it loose snow and the faint scent of ice from the mountains beyond. The woman stood perhaps 30 paces ahead. She was tall. Too tall, the rider thought. At first glance, she appeared human, yet there was something wrong about her shape. Her arms seemed unnaturally long, her shoulders broad. Her dark hair hung wild about her face and danced in the wind like tangled seaweed. The horse snorted and stepped backward. Animals often know what men refuse to see. The rider crossed himself. "Who stands upon the road?" he called. The woman did not answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, watching, listening. The moon slipped from behind a cloud. Its pale light fell upon her face. The rider felt the blood drain from his cheeks. Her eyes gleamed strangely in the darkness. Not with kindness. Not even with anger. They held the cold emptiness of a winter sea. The silence stretched between them. Then the woman smiled. It was not a human smile. The rider had seen wolves bare their teeth during hard winters. He had seen starving foxes circle lambs trapped in deep snow. The smile before him belonged to something older than either. something that had forgotten mercy long ago. The horse reared suddenly. Its terrified cry echoed across the mountain slopes. The rider fought to control it. When he looked forward again, the woman had vanished, gone, as though she had never stood there at all. His heart hammered against his ribs. He turned in the saddle. Nothing. Only darkness. Only drifting snow. Only the endless silence of the heath. Then a voice came from behind him, soft, almost gentle. "You are far from home." The rider froze. The voice had come from so close he could feel its breath, yet no one had passed him. Slowly, with every muscle trembling, he turned his head. She stood beside the horse. No footsteps, no sound. One moment absent, the next standing within arm's reach. The rider stared into her face, and at last he knew. Every tale told beside every fire, every warning whispered by frightened shepherds, every prayer spoken before crossing the mountain roads after dark. They had all been true. This was Jóra, the terror of Jóra, the eater of men, the hunter of lonely travelers. The woman's smile widened. "You know my name." The rider could not speak. His mouth had become dry as dust. Jóra reached out one hand. The fingers were long and pale, too pale, like the fingers of a corpse buried beneath snow. The horse screamed. With a violent jerk, it broke free and bolted down the mountain path. The rider barely remained in the saddle. Branches whipped past him. Loose stones scattered beneath pounding hooves. Behind him came laughter, a woman's laughter, cold and sharp as breaking ice. The sound followed him through the darkness, over the hills, across the valleys, into his dreams, for the rest of his life. Years later, when he was an old man with grandchildren gathered about his hearth, he would still wake trembling whenever winter winds rattled the roof. And when people asked what he had seen upon Hell Heath that night, he always answered the same way. "I saw death wearing the face of a woman." Then he would fall silent, for some memories are too heavy to carry into words, and some fears never truly leave a man's heart. Yet the rider survived. Many others did not, because Jóra's hunger was growing, and before long the entire district would learn that the creature haunting Jóra was no mere outlaw or wandering madwoman. Something darker had awakened within her, something ancient, something that belonged to the wild places beyond the reach of church bells and human laws. The mountains themselves seemed to know it, for the winter that followed was remembered for generations. The wolves came down from the highlands, the rivers froze solid, the nights grew longer, and somewhere among the cliffs above the lonely road, Jóra watched, waiting for the next traveler, waiting for the next scream, waiting for the blood upon the snow. Chapter 2. Before the Darkness. Every monster has a beginning. The old stories often forget this. They speak of beasts, witches, spirits, and demons as though they emerged fully formed from darkness itself. Yet the truth is usually more tragic. Before fear gave her a name, before mothers warned their children about her, and before travelers crossed themselves at the mention of Drukleif, there had simply been a girl named Jóra. She was born during a violent autumn storm. The wind howled across the valley all night long. Rain battered the turf-roofed farmhouse. Thunder rolled among the distant mountains. The midwife would later swear that she had never seen such weather accompany a birth. The land itself was restless, she told people years afterward. Something was stirring. Whether she spoke the truth or merely sought meaning in later events, no one could say. But stories have a way of growing around strange lives. Jóra grew into a child unlike the others. She was strong, stronger than boys, older than herself. She climbed cliffs that frightened grown men. She wandered alone into places where even shepherds hesitated to go. More than once her parents searched desperately through the night, fearing wolves or hidden ravines had claimed her. Yet each time she returned unharmed, sometimes smiling, sometimes carrying strange treasures, a raven's feather, a fox skull, a piece of black stone shaped like a human face. The old women in the district whispered among themselves. Children should fear the wilderness. Jóra seemed to belong to it. As she grew older, her beauty became impossible to ignore. Her hair was dark as volcanic rock after rain. Her eyes carried the gray-blue color of distant glaciers. Young men found excuses to visit her father's farm. They repaired fences that did not need repairing. They offered help with haymaking. They lingered long after their work was done. Many hoped to win her affection. Most failed. Jóra treated them politely enough, but there was always distance in her gaze. She seemed interested in things beyond ordinary life. The mountains, the rivers, the lonely places where the wind never stopped speaking. There were times when people noticed her staring toward Jóra for hours at a time, as though listening, as though someone stood there calling her name. One evening her father asked about it. They sat beside the fire while snow drifted against the walls outside. "What do you see up there?" he said. Jóra looked toward the dark window. "Nothing. Then why do you keep looking?" For a long moment she did not answer. The flames crackled softly. Finally she spoke. "It feels familiar." Her father laughed. "Familiar? You've barely set foot on those slopes." Jóra continued staring into the darkness. "Perhaps," yet her voice carried little conviction. Deep inside she felt something she could not explain. A pull, a longing, a strange certainty that part of her belonged somewhere beyond the farms and fields of ordinary people. The feeling frightened her, but it also fascinated her. As the years passed, the feeling only grew stronger. Then came the summer that changed everything. It began with a traveler. A stranger rode into the district one bright afternoon. No one knew exactly where he came from. Some said the south, others claimed the western fjords. He carried himself differently from local men. He spoke with confidence. His clothes were finer, his smile easier. The women noticed him immediately. The men watched him carefully. His name was Björn. And when he first laid eyes upon Jóra, something shifted in the course of both their lives. The stranger could not look away, nor could she. For the first time in her life, Jóra felt the walls around her heart begin to crack. The mountains faded. The strange voices she imagined hearing upon the wind grew quiet. The restless loneliness that had followed her since childhood seemed to disappear whenever Björn stood near. They walked together beside rivers. They sat beneath the midnight sun. They spoke for hours about dreams, journeys, and futures neither had yet lived. People smiled when they saw them. Even Jóra's father approved. For the first time in years, his daughter seemed truly happy. Perhaps, he thought, whatever shadow had lingered over her life was finally passing. But happiness is often fragile, especially in old stories, and fate rarely allows peace to endure for long. Late that autumn, when the first frost silvered the grass and the geese began their journey south, Björn rode away. Only for a short time, he promised. A few weeks at most. He had business to settle, family matters, obligations he could not ignore. Then he would return. Then they would marry. Then their future would begin. Jóra watched him disappear along the distant road. She stood there until horse and rider vanished completely. And for the first time in many years, the mountains began calling to her again. Softly, patiently, like an old friend who had never truly gone away. She did not know it then. But she had just seen Björn for the last time, and before another winter had passed, grief would open a door within her soul that should never have been opened. A door through which darkness was already waiting. Chapter 3. The Promise Broken. Winter arrived early that year. The first storms swept down from the highlands before the sheep had all been gathered from the mountains. Snow settled upon the fields. The rivers slowed beneath sheets of ice. The world grew quiet. And still, Björn did not return. At first, Jóra was not worried. Travel in Iceland was never certain. A flooded river, a damaged horse, a storm upon the heath. Many things could delay a man. She waited. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Yet no rider appeared upon the distant road. No message came, no letter, no explanation. Nothing. Her father watched her grow quieter with each passing day. The laughter that had once filled the farmhouse disappeared. The brightness in her eyes slowly faded. Often she stood alone beside the window after watching the snow fall, watching the empty road, waiting, always waiting. The neighbors noticed. People spoke in low voices. Some pitied her, others shook their heads knowingly. Promises made by travelers were not always worth much. Spring eventually returned. The snow melted. The rivers swelled. The birds came back from the south. Still Björn did not come. Then one evening a trader arrived from a distant district. He carried wool, tools, and news. News traveled slowly in Iceland, but eventually it traveled. The trader sat beside the fire. He ate. He drank. He spoke of farms and families from faraway valleys. Then he mentioned a wedding, a wealthy farmer's daughter, a handsome young husband, a celebration lasting 3 days. The moment he spoke the husband's name, the room fell silent. Jóra felt the world stop. At first, she thought she had misheard. Surely there was another man by that name. Surely fate could not be so cruel. Yet every detail matched. The district, the family, the description. There could be no mistake. Jörn had married another woman, months ago, while Junia waited, while she believed every promise he had made. The trader continued speaking, unaware of the devastation spreading through the room. Jóra rose quietly. No one stopped her. No one knew what words could possibly help. She walked outside into the cold evening. The mountains stood dark against the fading sky. The wind moved softly through the grass. For a long time, she simply stood there. Then, something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Some wounds make no sound at all, yet they change everything. The tears came. Hot, relentless years of strength dissolved beneath a flood of grief. She sank to her knees, her hands pressed into the earth. Her heart felt hollow. Empty, abandoned, the pain seemed too large for a single human soul to contain. And as darkness settled across the valley, she heard it again. The voice. The same voice she had heard since childhood. The same whisper that drifted from the mountains whenever she stood alone. This time it seemed clearer. Closer. Come. The word drifted through the wind. Come. Jóra lifted her head. The voice had come from Drukleif. She knew it. No one else could hear it, yet she knew. Come. The mountain was calling her, and for the first time in her life, she answered. That very night she left her father's farm. No farewell. No explanation. No tears remaining. Only silence. The moon hung above the highlands as she walked northward, across frozen streams, across barren heath, toward the black cliffs of Drukleif. The journey took hours. The wind strengthened. Clouds swallowed the stars. Yet, she continued. The voice guided her. Always ahead. Always just beyond reach. Near midnight, she reached the foot of the cliffs. Towering walls of rock rose above her. Ancient, cold, unforgiving, the voice stopped. For the first time all night, silence returned. Jóra stood alone, breathing heavily. Suddenly she wondered whether madness had overtaken her. Perhaps grief had finally broken her mind. Perhaps there had never been a voice at all. Then she saw the cave, a narrow opening hidden among the rocks. She had crossed this region many times as a child, yet she had never noticed it before. A faint glow flickered within. Not firelight, something stranger, something pale and blue. Jóra stepped closer. The air grew colder, far colder than the winter night around her. A strange feeling settled over her. Fear, wonder, expectation, as though she stood upon the threshold of another world. Then a figure emerged from the darkness. A woman, tall, ancient, wrapped in shadows. Her eyes gleamed like moonlight upon ice. Jóra froze. Every instinct urged her to flee, yet she could not move. The woman studied her quietly. At last she spoke. I have waited many years for you. The words echoed through the night. Jura felt a chill pass through her entire body. "Who are you?" she whispered. The stranger smiled. A slow smile. A knowing smile. The kind worn by those who possess secrets older than kingdoms. "I am," the woman replied, "what you are destined to become." And above them, hidden among the cliffs of Drukleaf, something stirred in the darkness. Something ancient. Something hungry. Something that had been waiting for Junia far longer than she could possibly imagine. Chapter 4. The Woman in the Cave. The wind died. The silence that followed felt unnatural. Jura stood frozen before the mouth of the cave, unable to look away from the woman who stood before her. She appeared old, yet not in the way ordinary people grow old. No wrinkles marked her face. No weakness bent her body. Instead, she seemed ancient in the way mountains are ancient. Timeless, unchanging, as though centuries had passed over her without leaving their mark. The pale blue light spilling from the cave danced across her features. For an instant, Junia thought she recognized her, not from memory, not from any meeting, but from dreams. Forgotten dreams buried deep within childhood. The feeling unsettled her. "Who are you?" Jura asked again. The woman tilted her head. Names lose their meaning after enough winters. Her voice sounded strangely distant, as though it traveled from far away, as yours soon will. A chill passed through Junia. "I do not understand." "No," the woman smiled. "Not yet." The strange glow deep inside the cave pulsed softly. Like a beating heart, Jura glanced toward it. The light seemed to move, to breathe. Something about it both frightened and fascinated her. "Why did you call me here?" The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because grief has opened the door." Jura felt her stomach tighten. The pain she had carried since learning of Byrne's betrayal surged once more through her chest. The woman saw it immediately. She seemed almost pleased. "You loved him." Jura said nothing. "You gave him your trust." Silence, and he broke it. The words struck harder than any blade. Jura turned away. The mountains disappeared behind a blur of tears. The woman stepped closer. "So tell me," her voice became softer, more persuasive. "What remains now?" Jura searched for an answer. She found none. The future she had imagined was gone. The life she had dreamed of had vanished like smoke. Only emptiness remained. Only anger. Only sorrow. The woman nodded slowly. "As I thought." For a long moment neither spoke. Then the stranger extended her hand. "Come." Jura hesitated. Every warning ever spoken by her parents echoed inside her mind. "Turn back, leave, run." Yet another voice spoke louder. A darker voice, one born from heartbreak. "What is left to lose?" Slowly, Junia took the woman's hand. The instant their fingers touched, the cave vanished. The world vanished. Darkness swallowed everything. Jura gasped. She felt herself falling, not through air, not through water, through memory, through time itself. Visions exploded around her, mountains rising from fire, glaciers advancing across the land, storms raging over empty valleys, generations born and buried, kingdoms rising and falling, the earth changing beneath endless skies. She saw hunters pursuing prey across ancient snowfields. She saw longships cutting through dark seas. She saw forgotten graves hidden beneath moss-covered hills. Thousands of years passed in moments. And through it all, something watched. Something vast. Something older than mankind. A presence hidden beneath the land itself. Waiting, always waiting. Jura cried out. The visions vanished. Suddenly, she stood once more inside the cave, breathing hard. Sweat covered her skin despite the cold. The woman released her hand. "Now you begin to understand." Jura staggered backward. "What was that?" "The truth." "No," her voice trembled. "It cannot be." The woman laughed quietly. "Humans always say that." She turned toward the deeper darkness within the cave. "The world is older than your priests know." Her voice echoed from the stone walls. "Older than kings, older than churches, older than every story your people tell. The blue light grew brighter. Shadows danced across the cavern. Jóra noticed strange markings carved into the rock, symbols unlike any she had ever seen. Some resembled animals, others resembled stars. All appeared impossibly ancient. The woman approached the glowing center of the cave. Long before your ancestors arrived, powers lived in these mountains. Her hand rested upon a stone altar. They sleep now. The glow intensified. But sleep is not death. Jóra felt the cave tremble. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Somewhere deep below came a distant sound, a slow rumble, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Fear surged through her. At last she understood. She should not be here. Whatever dwelled within this place was not meant for human eyes. She turned toward the entrance, toward freedom, toward the life she had left behind. Then the woman spoke. "Do you wish him to suffer?" Jóra stopped. The question struck like lightning. Björn, his face flashed through her thoughts. His promises, his lies, his betrayal. The wound reopened instantly. The woman smiled. She had found exactly what she sought. You still love him. Jóra remained silent. And because you love him, his betrayal hurts even more. The cave trembled again. The blue light pulsed faster, like a living thing awakening. The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. What if you never had to feel weakness again? Jóra's heart pounded. What if no one could ever hurt you? The glow reflected in her eyes. What if those who betrayed you learned to fear your name? The temptation was terrible, not because it promised power, but because it promised relief, an end to pain, an end to sorrow, an end to being helpless. The woman extended her hand once more. The blue fire danced around her fingers. Choose, the mountain groaned. The ancient darkness beneath Jóra stirred. And for the first time in her life, Jóra stood upon the edge of a decision from which there would be no return. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, destiny waited. Chapter 5. The Bargain. The blue fire swayed gently above the stone altar. Jóra stared at it. Outside the cave, snow fell across the cliffs of Jóra. Inside, the world seemed to hold its breath. The ancient woman stood waiting, patient, certain, as though she already knew the choice that would be made. Perhaps she did. Nothing is given freely, Jóra said at last. The woman's smile widened. At least, Junior was still wise enough to ask. No, the stranger replied. Nothing worth having. The cave rumbled again. A low vibration passed through the stone beneath their feet. The mountain was awake now. Listening, Junior could feel it. What would it cost? The woman's pale eyes reflected the blue light. A question every soul asks. For the first time, sadness touched her voice. The answer is always the same. Jóra waited. The woman's gaze did not waver. It costs what you cannot reclaim. Silence settled between them. Jóra already understood. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. A bargain with darkness never demanded gold, never demanded land. It demanded pieces of the soul, memories, compassion, love, the things that made a person human, the things that mattered most. She thought of her father, of childhood summers, of laughter around the hearth, of dreams once cherished. Then she thought of Björn, the betrayal, the humiliation, the loneliness, the wound that would not heal. Her heart hardened, only slightly, but enough. The ancient woman saw it happen and smiled. You are already walking the path. The blue fire rose higher. The shadows around the cave walls stretched and twisted. Jóra noticed movement among them. Faces, dozens of faces. Men, women, children, appearing for brief moments before fading once more. Watching, waiting, she felt cold fear crawl along her spine. Who are they? The woman glanced toward the shadows. The others. Others? Those who made their own bargains. The faces vanished. Only darkness remained. Jóra wished she had never asked. The cave suddenly seemed far larger than before. The darkness deeper. the silence heavier. As though unseen things occupied every corner. Observing, listening, hungry, the woman approached the altar. At its center rested a black stone, unlike any Junya had ever seen. It absorbed light. The blue fire touched its surface, yet cast no reflection. It appeared less like stone than a hole carved into reality itself. The sight made her uneasy. "This mountain remembers many things," the woman said. "Older things than men were meant to know." Her fingers brushed the stone. The cave trembled immediately. A deep groan echoed through the earth. Far below, something shifted. Jora felt it. Not heard, not seen. Felt like a giant creature turning in its sleep. The sensation nearly stole her breath. What is beneath? For the first time, uncertainty crossed the woman's face, only for an instant. Then it vanished, something older than names. That answer frightened Junya more than any other. The woman extended her hand. "Place yours upon the stone." Jora hesitated. Everything within her screamed against it. Leave, run, return home. There is still time, yet another part of her refused. The wounded part. The broken part, the part that could not endure weakness any longer. Slowly she stepped forward. The black stone waited, cold, silent, patient. As her fingertips touched its surface, agony exploded through her body. Jora screamed. Visions flooded her mind, not memories. Possibilities. She saw herself walking mountain roads beneath moonlight. She saw travelers fleeing before her. She saw fear in human eyes. She saw she saw lonely graves, empty valleys, endless winters, and through every vision she remained unchanged. Year after year, decade after decade, while the world aged around her, people died, generations vanished. Yet she endured, alone, always alone. The loneliness struck harder than the violence, harder than death itself. The visions ended. Jora collapsed to her knees, her chest heaved. Tears streamed down her face. The ancient woman stood over her. "What did you see?" Jora could barely speak. "A curse." The woman nodded. "Every gift is." The answer hung in the air. Simple, terrible, true. For a long time, neither moved. The blue fire crackled softly. Snow whispered against the cave entrance. Far below, the sleeping presence continued its slow breathing. At last, Junior rose. Her legs trembled. Her soul trembled. Yet she stood. The ancient woman searched her face, looking for doubt, looking for fear, looking for hope. What she found instead was something else. Resolve, dangerous resolve. The kind born when grief and anger join hands. The kind that changes destinies. "You still wish to continue?" The question echoed through the cavern. Jora closed her eyes. She thought of the life she had lost, the future stolen from her, the trust destroyed. When she opened her eyes again, they seemed colder than before. Yes, the blue fire flared. The cave shook violently. A roar echoed somewhere deep beneath the mountain. Not the roar of an animal, not the roar of wind. Something older, something awakening. The ancient woman smiled. For the first time, genuine satisfaction shone in her face. Then she stepped aside. Behind the altar, hidden until now, another passage opened within the rock. Dark, narrow, descending into the heart of the mountain. A breath of icy air emerged from its depths, along with something else, a faint whisper. Thousands of voices speaking at once, calling, inviting, promising. Jora felt the hairs rise on her neck. What lies below? The woman looked into the darkness. Even she seemed cautious now. Respectful, your future. The whispering grew louder. The mountain groaned again. And without fully understanding why, Junior took her first step into the darkness beneath Jóra, the path from which no soul had ever returned unchanged. Chapter 6. Beneath the mountain. The passage descended deep into the heart of Jóra. At first, Junior could still see the faint blue glow from the cave behind her. Then, even that disappeared. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the whispering remained. Thousands of distant voices, men, women, children, all speaking at once. Yet none spoke words she could understand. The sound flowed around her like a river, ancient, endless, alive. The air grew colder with every step. Soon her breath drifted before her in pale clouds. Ice covered the stone walls, yet no frost touched her skin. A strange warmth burned within her now. Something new, something that had not been there before. She descended for what felt like hours. Perhaps it was only minutes. Time behaved strangely beneath the mountain. The deeper she went, the less certain she became of anything. Even her own memories felt distant, like stories belonging to someone else. Then the passage widened. Jóra stepped into an enormous cavern. She stopped immediately. The sight stole her breath. The chamber stretched far beyond what should have been possible. Its ceiling vanished into darkness above. Massive stone pillars rose from the depths like the trunks of ancient trees. Blue fire burned everywhere, not from torches, not from lamps. The flames emerged directly from cracks in the earth itself, and in the center of the cavern stood a lake. Black, perfectly still. Its surface reflected nothing. Not the flames, not the stone, not even Junior herself. She approached slowly. The whispering voices fell silent. For the first time since entering the mountain, absolute stillness surrounded her. The silence felt heavier than sound, more dangerous. Then the lake moved. A single ripple crossed its surface. Another followed. Then another. Something beneath the black water was rising. Jóra's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at her to flee. Yet she could not move. The water parted. A shape emerged. At first she thought it was a man. Then she saw it more clearly and realized no human language could properly describe what stood before her. It possessed a face, yet the face shifted constantly. Young, old, male, female, human, something else. Its features changed faster than thought, as though every face that had ever existed lived within it. Its eyes alone remained constant, two pale lights glowing within endless darkness. Jóra felt very small, very mortal. The being regarded her quietly. When it finally spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. From the cavern, from the mountain, from within her own thoughts. "You have come willingly." The words shook the stone beneath her feet. Jóra struggled to answer. Yes, the being studied her. Its countless faces shifting endlessly. Few do. The black water rippled around it. Most must be dragged here by fate. Fear gripped her heart. "What are you?" The being remained silent for a long moment, as though considering whether the question deserved an answer. Finally, it spoke. "I was old when your gods were young." The cavern trembled. Blue flames bent away from it, as though even fire feared its presence. "I was old when the first humans crossed this land." The mountain groaned softly. "I will remain when the last story has been forgotten." Jóra felt her courage falter. This was no ghost, no spirit, no troll from children's tales. This belonged to another age, another reality. The being's gaze settled upon her, and suddenly it saw everything. Her childhood, her hopes, her grief, her love for Björn, her heartbreak, every secret, every wound. Nothing remained hidden. Jóra felt exposed, naked before a power beyond comprehension. The being nodded slowly. "You seek strength. Yes, you seek freedom from pain. Yes," its eyes brightened, "you seek revenge." Jóra hesitated, only for a moment. Then she answered. Yes, the word echoed through the cavern. The being smiled, or perhaps it merely created the appearance of a smile. The effect was unsettling. Humans always arrive with the same hunger. The lake darkened further. The shadows lengthened. "You believe power will heal suffering." Jóra remained silent. The being leaned closer. The cavern darkened around it. "Power does not heal." The whisper struck her like ice. "It transforms." The black water began to churn. Images appeared upon its surface. Björn, laughing, smiling, holding another woman, living the life once promised to Junior. The old wound reopened instantly. Pain surged through her, raw, fresh, unbearable. The being watched carefully, studying her reaction, measuring her, testing her. Then another image appeared, Jóra herself. Older, forgotten, alone, living an ordinary life, growing old, dying, her name lost to time. The vision faded, silence returned, the being spoke once more. You stand between two deaths. Jóra frowned. I do not understand. One death comes quickly. The being pointed toward the vision of ordinary life, the other never comes at all. The meaning settled slowly upon her, like winter frost creeping across glass. Immortality, the possibility hung before her. Terrible, tempting, monstrous, the being's countless faces continued shifting. Choose, the word echoed endlessly. Choose, 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 the mountain itself seemed to repeat it. Jóra looked into the black water. For a moment she saw her own reflection. Then something else stared back. A taller figure, a darker figure. A woman whose eyes glowed beneath moonlight. A woman feared across the land. A woman whose name mothers whispered to frightened children. A woman who walked alone through centuries. Jóra did not yet recognize her, but the reader would, for reflected in that impossible lake stood the first true glimpse of the creature she would become. The terror of Jóra, the shadow upon the mountain road, the hunter of lonely travelers, the legend that would survive long after kingdoms had crumbled into dust. And somewhere deep within the darkness, the ancient being smiled, for the transformation had already begun. Chapter 7. The Transformation. The ancient being waited. The black lake lay silent between them. No wind stirred, no voice whispered. Even the mountain seemed to pause. Waiting, watching, judging, Jóra stared into the dark water. The reflection remained. That other woman, that future self, tall beneath the moonlight, wrapped in darkness, feared by all who crossed her path. A part of her recoiled from the vision. Another part could not look away. The ancient being's voice rolled through the cavern. You fear what you may become. Jóra swallowed. Yes, the answer came easily. For it was true, the being nodded. As you should. The reply surprised her. She had expected temptation, promises, lies. Instead, she heard something colder, something honest. The being's countless faces shifted. Every transformation, the blue flames flickered. Humans simply pretend otherwise. Jóra looked down at her hands. They trembled, not from fear, from realization. The girl who had walked into these mountains already felt distant. The daughter, the dreamer, the young woman who had waited beside a window for a man who would never return. She was fading, like a figure disappearing into mist. The being extended one dark hand. Within its palm rested a small object, a crystal, no larger than a raven's egg, black as midnight. Yet deep inside burned a faint silver light, like a star trapped beneath ice. Jóra stared at it. What is it? A memory. The answer made no sense, yet somehow she understood. The crystal seemed alive, ancient, hungry. The being held it toward her. Take it. Jóra hesitated, then slowly reached forward. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, pain exploded through her mind. She cried out. The cavern vanished. The lake vanished. Everything vanished. Only memories remained, thousands of them. Not her memories, other memories, other lives. A shepherd freezing to death upon the heath. A child lost during a blizzard. A warrior dying beneath a Viking sword. A widow weeping beside a grave. A traveler vanishing into darkness. Lives, deaths, centuries of sorrow, centuries of fear, centuries of loneliness. The suffering of countless souls poured through her. The weight was unbearable. Jóra fell to her knees. Her scream echoed through the mountain. Still, the visions continued. She saw every broken promise, every betrayal, every abandoned dream, every grief carried by human hearts across the ages. The mountain remembered them all, and now so did she. When the visions finally ceased, she lay gasping upon the stone floor. Tears streamed down her face. The crystal rested in her hand, Its silver light burned brighter now. The being watched silently. "What have you done to me?" Its answer came softly. "You have seen humanity." Jura laughed bitterly, a broken laugh, a wounded laugh. "If this is humanity, then it is only pain." The being's expression remained unreadable. "There is no love without loss." The words hung in the darkness. "There is no hope without disappointment." The blue flames danced. "There is no life without suffering." Jura closed her eyes. For the first time, she understood something terrible. Her pain was not unique. Her grief was not it was simply one thread in an endless tapestry of sorrow stretching across generations. The realization changed something inside her, not all at once, not dramatically, but deeply, like a crack spreading through ice. The being sensed it and smiled. "You begin to see." Jura opened her eyes. Something within them had changed. The softness that once lived there had diminished, not vanished, but diminished, like a fire losing its warmth. The black crystal dissolved suddenly. Its silver light flowed into her skin, into her blood, into her soul. The cavern shook violently. The lake erupted. Dark waves crashed against unseen shores. The mountain roared. Jura cried out once more, not from pain, from transformation. Cold fire raced through her veins. Her heartbeat slowed, then slowed further until she could barely hear it at all. The blue flames bent toward her, drawn to her, obeying her. The shadows around the cavern stretched and curled, like living things greeting a new master. The ancient being stepped back. For the first time, respect appeared upon its countless faces. Jura rose slowly. Her movements felt different. Lighter, stronger, stranger. She could hear things impossible to hear before. Water dripping miles away. Stones shifting deep beneath the earth. The distant howl of wolves across the mountains. Every sound arrived with perfect clarity. She looked toward the black lake. Her reflection stared back. And once again, it was changing. Her face remained beautiful. But there was something else now. Something dangerous. Something wild. The eyes especially. The eyes no longer belonged entirely to the girl who had entered the mountain. A faint silver glow flickered within them, like moonlight beneath frozen water. The being spoke. "The bargain is made." Jura touched her face. "What am I now?" The answer came after a long silence, not because the being did not know, because the truth required care. At last it replied, "Not human." The words echoed endlessly. "Not human." The mountain repeated them. The lake repeated them. Something deep within Jura repeated them. She should have felt horror. She should have felt regret. Instead, she felt only emptiness, a vast and growing emptiness. The being watched carefully. "How do you feel?" Jura searched herself. She remembered her father. The memory felt distant. She remembered Björn. The wound remained. But even that felt colder now, further away, like an old scar. Finally she answered, "I feel." Her voice trailed off. For the first time she could not find the word. The being finished the sentence for her. Alone, Jura looked toward the black water, toward the darkness beyond, toward the endless centuries now stretching before her. And she realized the ancient being was right. For power had come, strength had come, fearlessness had come. But so had something else, a loneliness greater than any human grief. A loneliness that would outlive generations. A loneliness that would follow her across centuries. Far above, dawn broke over Iceland. The first rays of sunlight touched the snowy peaks. But deep beneath Rukleif, the sun did not reach. And when Junia finally turned toward the passage leading back to the world of she was no longer the woman who had entered. The legend had begun, and the mountain would never again be free of her shadow. Chapter 8. The First Winter. The people of the valley noticed the change before they understood it. At first, it was only a feeling, a heaviness in the air, a silence among the mountains. the sense that unseen eyes watched from distant ridges. Dogs barked at empty darkness. Horses grew nervous without reason. Sheep gathered tightly together when night approached. The old people exchanged worried glances. They had lived long enough to recognize certain signs. Something had awakened, something ancient, something hungry. Yet no one knew its name. Not yet. Far above the farms and valleys, Junior stood upon a cliff overlooking the land. Snow drifted around her. The winter wind tugged at her dark hair. Below lay the world she had once known. The world of ordinary people, warm hearths, families, laughter, love. She watched them from a distance. Like a ghost observing the living, the sight stirred memories, faint memories, fading memories. Each day they seemed less real. The ancient power flowing through her continued its work, changing her, separating her from the person she had once been. She no longer felt cold. She no longer felt hunger as ordinary humans did. Time itself seemed different. Hours passed like minutes. Days vanished unnoticed. The world moved. She remained. At first, she told herself she would never harm anyone. Whatever she had become, she still believed some part of the old Junior survived. She would live alone. She would avoid mankind. She would endure her curse in solitude. Such promises are easy in the beginning. The mountain knew better. Winter deep storms swept across the highlands. Travelers continued crossing the old roads, and loneliness grew. Loneliness has a voice. It whispers, it persuades, it finds the cracks within the heart. One evening, Junia stood overlooking the mountain pass. Far below, she saw a rider, a lone man crossing the snow-covered trail. The sight should have meant nothing, yet she could not look away. Something inside her stirred. Not curiosity, not hatred. Something stranger. She listened. The rider's heartbeat reached her ears. Steady, strong, human, warm, the sound fascinated her. Without realizing it, she followed. Moving silently through the darkness, keeping to the cliffs above, watching, always watching. The rider never saw her, yet several times he seemed uneasy. Several times he glanced toward the mountains, instinct warning him. Ancient instincts older than language. The instinct's prey awakens when a predator draws near. Jora followed him for miles. The heartbeat remained clear. Comforting, mesmerizing, the sound filled the emptiness inside her. For the first time since leaving the mountain, she felt less alone. The realization frightened her. She stopped immediately, turned away, returned to the cliffs, ashamed, confused. What was happening to her? Why had a stranger's presence affected her so deeply? The answer came days later. A blizzard struck without warning, one of the worst in living memory. Snow swallowed roads. Wind erased landmarks. Entire valleys vanished beneath white chaos. Travel became impossible. Yet one traveler remained trapped upon the mountain. A young shepherd. Barely more than a boy. He had lost his way. Jura found him shortly after sunset. He stumbled through deep snow. Exhausted, frozen, terrified. His lantern had gone out hours earlier. Death followed close behind. The old Junior would have helped him. Without hesitation. Without thought. The new Junior simply watched, hidden among the rocks. The boy collapsed, struggled to rise, collapsed again. His breathing grew. Junior could hear every heartbeat, every desperate breath, every prayer whispered through frozen lips. Something inside her urged compassion. Something else urged patience. The two forces battled within her, humanity and whatever now lived beside it. The storm intensified. The boy's strength faded. His heartbeat slowed. Jura stepped forward. Snow swirled around her. The shepherd looked up. For a moment, relief flooded his face. A person. Someone had found him. Someone could save him. Then he saw her eyes, the silver light, the unnatural stillness, the impossible calm. His relief vanished. Fear replaced it, pure fear. Jura felt it immediately. And to her horror, she found it intoxicating. The fear warmed the emptiness within her, fed it, satisfied it, only for a moment, but enough. The shepherd backed away. What are you? His voice trembled. Jóra did not answer, because she did not know. The boy crossed himself. The ancient gesture meant nothing against the storm, or against what stood before him. Please. The word barely escaped his lips. Jóra felt the last remnants of her former self struggling desperately within her. Help him. Save him. Remember who you were. For a moment, she almost did. For a moment, the old Junia nearly won. Then the mountain whispered. The same voice. The same ancient voice that had called her years ago. And the moment passed. The shepherd fled into the storm. Jóra remained motionless. Watching, listening, the heartbeat grew fainter. Further away. Then it stopped. Silence. Only wind remained. Only snow. Only darkness. Jóra stood alone upon the mountain. The realization came slowly. She had allowed him to die. And somehow, that felt worse. Far worse. Because it had been a choice. Her first true choice. The storm buried the shepherd before morning. His body was found weeks later when the snow began to melt. People spoke sadly of the tragedy. They blamed the weather. Bad luck. The cruelty of winter. Only one old woman shook her head. Only one. She examined the frozen face, the terror still visible there. Then she looked toward Drukleif and quietly whispered a name that had not yet become a legend. Jóra, the wind carried the word across the mountain. And somewhere high among the cliffs, a silver-eyed figure listened. The first chapter of the legend had been written. Many darker chapters would follow. Chapter 9. The Name on the Wind. Legends are rarely born in a... They begin as whispers. A strange story told by a frightened traveler, a warning passed between neighbors, a rumor spoken softly after sunset. Then, little by little, the whispers grow, until one day everyone knows the name. The spring following the shepherd's death brought unease to the valley. Not fear. Not yet. Something quieter. Something harder to explain. People felt watched. The sensation came and went like distant thunder. Sometimes a farmer working alone in a field would suddenly glance toward the mountains. Certain someone stood there, watching, only to find empty cliffs beneath drifting clouds. Sometimes travelers heard footsteps behind them on lonely roads. Yet whenever they turned, no one was there. The stories multiplied. A merchant claimed he had seen a woman standing upon a ridge at sunset. She vanished when he blinked. A shepherd swore he heard a woman laughing among the rocks during a snowstorm. Others reported silver eyes gleaming briefly in the darkness. No one could prove anything. No one could explain anything. Yet the stories continued, and slowly a name began to emerge. Jóra. At first only the oldest people used it, those who remembered the young woman who had disappeared years earlier, those who remembered her beauty, her sadness, her broken engagement. They spoke the name carefully, with pity, with regret. But pity fades when fear arrives. One evening a trader named Einar crossed the mountain road alone. He was a practical man, a man who trusted facts, not ghosts, not old wives' tales, certainly not stories about vanished women haunting the cliffs. When neighbors warned him about traveling after dark, he laughed. The dead have never bothered me. Those would later become famous words, repeated for generations, always followed by silence. Einar left shortly before sunset. His horse was strong, the weather clear, the road familiar. Everything seemed ordinary. For several hours the journey passed without incident. The stars emerged. The moon climbed above the mountains. The snow reflected silver light across the landscape. Beautiful, peaceful, deadly near midnight the horse stopped, without warning, without reason. Einar frowned. The animal refused to move. He pulled the reins. Nothing, he cursed. Still nothing. Then the horse began trembling. Einar felt irritation turned slowly into concern. The animal stared toward a rocky slope overlooking the road. Something stood there. A figure, motionless, watching. At first Einar assumed it was another traveler. Then he noticed the distance. The figure stood impossibly high upon the cliff. No human could have climbed there. Not at night, not in winter. A cold feeling settled into his stomach. The figure began moving, not downward, not along the ridge. Toward him, across open air, the traitor blinked. Surely his eyes deceived him. Yet the impossible continued. The woman descended the cliff face as effortlessly as drifting snow. No slipping, no stumbling, no concern for gravity itself. The horse screamed, a terrible sound. Raw terror given voice. The figure reached the road. Moonlight illuminated her face. Beautiful, terribly beautiful. Dark hair flowed around her shoulders. Silver light glimmered within her eyes. She appeared young, yet something ancient lingered beneath her features. Something inhuman. Einar felt fear for the first time. Real fear, the kind that reaches deep into a man's bones. The woman smiled, not cruelly, not kindly, simply knowingly, as though she understood exactly how the night would end. "Good evening," she said. Her voice sounded perfectly normal. That somehow made it worse. Einar's mouth felt dry. The woman's smile widened. For a moment, sadness flickered across her face. A brief shadow, a memory of someone she once had been. Then it vanished. "They call me Junia." The name struck him unexpectedly, like the echo of an old story, an old warning. The horse bolted. Einar barely managed to remain seated. Snow flew beneath pounding hooves. The road vanished behind him, the mountains blurred. Still he fled. Behind him came laughter, not mocking, not joyful. Lonely, terribly lonely. The sound haunted him more than any scream could have. He reached the valley shortly before dawn. Exhausted, half frozen, shaking uncontrollably. People gathered around him, demanding answers, demanding explanations. Einar sat beside a fire, wrapped in blankets, staring into the flames. For a long time he said nothing. Then he finally spoke. "I saw her." The room fell silent. Every face turned toward him. The traitor swallowed. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Jora walks the mountain." No one laughed. No one doubted. Something in his eyes prevented it. The fear there was too real, too deep. From that night onward, the stories spread faster than ever before. Across valleys, across rivers, across distant districts. Travelers carried the tale wherever they went. Farmers repeated it beside winter fires. Children listened wide-eyed beneath wool blankets. And always the story ended the same way, with a warning. Do not cross Rookcliffe after dark. Do not answer voices upon the wind. And if you see a woman with silver eyes standing beside the road, pray she merely wishes to watch. For no one yet understood the truth. The loneliness within Junia was growing. The darkness within her was growing. And before another winter passed, watching would no longer be enough. The mountain hungered, and through her, it would soon begin to feed. Chapter 9. The Name on the Wind. Legends are rarely born in a single night. They begin as whispers, a strange story told by a frightened traveler, a warning passed between neighbors, a rumor spoken softly after sunset. Then, little by little, the whispers grow, until one day everyone knows the name. The spring following the shepherd's death brought unease to the valley, not fear, not yet, something quieter. Something harder to explain. People felt watched. The sensation came and went like distant thunder. Sometimes a farmer working alone in a field would suddenly glance toward the mountains. Certain someone stood there, watching, only to find empty cliffs beneath drifting clouds. Sometimes travelers heard footsteps behind them on lonely roads. Yet whenever they turned, no one was there. The stories multiplied. A merchant claimed he had seen a woman standing upon a ridge at sunset. She vanished when he blinked. A shepherd swore he heard a woman laughing among the rocks during a snowstorm. Others reported silver eyes gleaming briefly in the darkness. No one could prove anything. No one could explain anything. Yet the stories continued, and slowly a name began to emerge. Jora. At first, only the oldest people used it. Those who remembered the young woman who had disappeared years earlier. Those who remembered her beauty. her sadness, her broken engagement. They spoke the name carefully, with pity, with regret. But pity fades when fear arrives. One evening, a trader named Einar crossed the mountain road alone. He was a practical man, a man who trusted facts, not ghosts, not old wives' tales, certainly not stories about vanished women haunting the cliffs. When neighbors warned him about traveling after dark, he laughed. "The dead have never bothered me." Those would later become famous words, repeated for generations, always followed by silence. Einar left shortly before sunset. His horse was strong, the weather clear, the road familiar. Everything seemed ordinary. For several hours, the journey passed without incident. The stars emerged. The moon climbed above the mountains. The snow reflected silver light across the landscape. Beautiful, peaceful, deadly. Near midnight, the horse stopped. Without warning, without reason. Einar frowned. The animal refused to move. He pulled the reins. Nothing. He cursed. Still nothing. Then the horse began trembling. Einar felt irritation turn slowly. The animal stared toward a rocky slope overlooking the road. Something stood there, a figure, motionless, watching. At first, Einar assumed it was another traveler. Then he noticed the distance. The figure stood impossibly high upon the cliff. No human could have climbed there, not at night, not in winter. A cold feeling settled into his stomach. The figure began moving, not downward, not along the ridge, toward him, across open air. The trader blinked. Surely his eyes deceived him. Yet the impossible continued. The woman descended the cliff face as effortlessly as drifting snow. No slipping, no stumbling, no concern for gravity itself. The horse screamed, a terrible sound, raw terror given voice. The figure reached the road. Moonlight illuminated her face. Beautiful, terribly beautiful. Dark hair flowed around her shoulders. Silver light glimmered within her eyes. She appeared young, yet something ancient lingered beneath her features, something inhuman. Einar felt fear for the first time. Real fear, the kind that reaches deep into a man's bones. The woman smiled, not cruelly, not kindly, simply knowingly, as though she understood exactly how the night would end. "Good evening," she said. Her voice sounded perfectly normal. That somehow made it worse. Einar's mouth felt dry. "Who are you?" The woman's smile widened. For a moment, sadness flickered across her face. A brief shadow, a memory of someone she once had been. Then it vanished. "They call me Junia." The name struck him unexpectedly, like the echo of an old story, an old warning. The horse bolted. Einar barely managed to remain seated. Snow flew beneath pounding hooves. The road vanished behind him. The mountains blurred. Still he rode. Still he fled. Behind him came laughter. Not mocking, not joyful. Lonely, terribly lonely. The sound haunted him more than any scream could have. He reached the valley shortly before dawn. Exhausted, half frozen, shaking uncontrollably. People gathered around him, demanding answers, demanding explanations. Einar sat beside a fire, wrapped in blankets, staring into the flames. For a long time he said nothing. Then he finally spoke. "I saw her." The room fell silent. Every face turned toward him. The trader swallowed. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Jora walks the mountain." No one laughed. No one doubted. Something in his eyes prevented it. The fear there was too real, too deep. From that night onward, the story spread faster than ever before. Across valleys, across rivers, across distant districts. Travelers carried the tale wherever they went. Farmers repeated it beside winter fires. Children listened wide-eyed beneath wool blankets. And always the story ended the same way, with a warning. Do not cross Rookcliff after dark. Do not answer voices upon the wind. And if you see a woman with silver eyes standing beside the road, pray she merely wishes to watch. For no one yet understood the truth. The loneliness within Junia was growing. The darkness within her was growing. And before another winter passed, watching would no longer be enough. The mountain hungered, and through her it would soon begin to feed. Chapter 10. The First Blood. The summer passed quietly, too quietly. The people of the valley began to hope the stories had been exaggerated. After all, no one had vanished. No bodies had been found. No terrible crimes had stained the mountain roads. Perhaps Junia was merely a wandering spirit, a ghost, a lonely apparition haunting the cliffs, frightening travelers but causing no real harm. Such hopes rarely survive reality. Autumn arrived. The days shortened, the wind grew colder, and somewhere high above the valleys, something inside Junia continued to change. She spent long hours watching the roads, watching the people below. The distance between herself and humanity widened with every passing season. The memories of her old life had not vanished, but they no longer carried warmth. She remembered her father, yet the memory felt like a story she had once heard. She remembered laughter, yet could no longer recall the feeling itself. She remembered love, yet love seemed like something belonging to another creature, another existence, another world. Only loneliness remained sharp. Only loneliness remained real. And loneliness is a dangerous companion, especially when joined by power. One evening, shortly before the first snowfall, a hunter entered the mountains. His name was Guðmundur. He was known throughout the district as a fearless man. Strong, experienced, proud, the kind of man who believed no force on earth could master him. He laughed at stories about Junia, mocked them openly. A sad woman on a mountain becomes a monster in frightened minds. Those were his words. Many remembered them later. The hunter traveled alone. His horse carried supplies. His rifle rested across his saddle. The weather remained calm, the sky clear. Nothing suggested danger. Yet as sunset approached, the mountains grew strangely silent. No birds called. No foxes moved among the rocks. Even the wind seemed absent. The silence followed him, mile after mile, like a shadow. Then he saw her, standing upon a ridge, watching. The hunter smiled. At last. Proof that the stories were nonsense. Proof that fear had made fools of sensible people. He guided his horse toward the ridge. The woman did not move. Dark hair flowed in the evening wind. Silver eyes reflected the fading light. Beautiful, far more beautiful than he expected. For a brief moment, Guðmundur understood why frightened travelers remembered her. There was something captivating about her, something impossible to ignore. "You are Junia?" The woman nodded. "Nothing more." The hunter laughed. "I expected a monster." For an instant, something flickered behind her eyes. Pain, ancient pain. Then it disappeared. "Many do." Her voice sounded calm, almost gentle. The hunter dismounted. His confidence returned. The situation suddenly seemed ridiculous. A lonely woman living in the mountains. Nothing more. He stepped closer. "You know people fear you?" Jóra looked toward the distant valleys, the farms, the smoke rising from chimneys, the ordinary lives continuing below. "Yes, and does it amuse you?" For a long moment she did not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a sadness deeper than the mountains themselves. No, the answer surprised him. Something about it felt genuine, human. The hunter relaxed. The fear he had not admitted even to himself began fading. That was his mistake, the first mistake, the fatal mistake, because what stood before him was no longer entirely human. And some dangers do not announce themselves. The sun slipped below the horizon. Darkness spread across the mountains. The silver glow in Jura's eyes brightened. Guðmundur noticed a small detail, yet enough to awaken unease. He took a step backward. The woman remained motionless, watching him. The silence returned, heavy, oppressive. Then something happened, something neither fully understood. The loneliness inside Junia surged, suddenly, violently, like a starving beast awakening. she heard his heartbeat. Strong, warm, alive, the sound echoed inside her mind. The emptiness within her responded instantly. Hungrily, she tried to resist. For one terrible moment, she truly tried. The last fragments of her humanity fought desperately. Leave, walk away, let him go. But the mountain whispered, the darkness answered, and the struggle ended. Guðmundur saw the change. Too late. The sadness vanished from her face. The hesitation vanished. The silver light intensified. The hunter's instincts exploded into life. Run, every nerve in his body screamed the warning. He reached for his rifle. Jóra moved. The motion was almost invisible. One moment she stood several paces away. The next she stood directly before him. Impossible. The hunter froze. Shock robbed him of action. Jóra stared into his eyes. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she whispered, I am tired of being alone. The words carried centuries of sorrow, centuries of emptiness, centuries of hunger. And then the darkness took hold. The mountain echoed with a single scream, a scream heard by shepherds miles away, a scream later spoken of around countless fires. Then silence returned. Complete silence. The following morning, the horse wandered into the valley alone, its saddle stained with blood, its eyes wild with terror. The search party found traces near the mountain road, footprints, signs of struggle, broken stone, but no body, no explanation, only absence. And fear, real fear, the kind that changes communities, the kind that becomes legend. That night, every door in the district was barred. Every child called indoors before sunset. Every traveler reconsidered journeys through the mountains. And for the first time, people stopped speaking of Jóra as a woman. Instead, they spoke of her as something else, something beyond human understanding, something the mountain itself had created. High above them all, Jóra stood alone upon a cliff beneath the rising moon. The wind tugged at her hair. The stars shone cold above. Far below, lights flickered from distant farms. Human lives, human warmth, human belonging, things forever beyond her reach. She looked at her trembling hands, and for the first time since entering the mountain, she wept. Not because of what she had done, but because a part of her knew there would be more. Many more. The legend had crossed a threshold, and there would be no turning back.
Chapter 11. The hunt begins. Fear spreads faster than fire. Within weeks, stories of Guðmundur's disappearance had traveled far beyond the valley. Merchants carried the tale to distant settlements. Fishermen repeated it in harbors along the coast. Travelers spoke of it beside hearths and campfires. And everywhere the story remained the same. A man had entered Drukleif. A horse had returned. The man had not. People no longer laughed when Jóra's name was mentioned. The laughter had disappeared. Only caution remained. And fear. Especially fear. The old roads began to empty after sunset. Farmers chose longer routes rather than cross the mountain pass. Even experienced travelers avoided the region whenever possible. The cliffs of Drukleif grew silent, abandoned, yet silence rarely satisfies frightened. Soon enough, someone suggested a solution. If she exists, one farmer declared, then she can be found. Others agreed. If she can be found, she can be killed. That idea spread quickly. For human beings often believe every problem has a weapon waiting somewhere. Every monster a weakness, every darkness an end. They had forgotten one thing. Jóra herself had once been, and humans are often more dangerous than monsters. The meeting took place inside the largest farmhouse in the district. More than 30 men attended. Farmers, hunters, shepherds, even a few travelers who happened to be passing through. Oil lamps burned late into the night. Outside, winter winds rattled the walls. Inside, voices rose in heated debate. Some argued for caution, others demanded action. Eventually, one man stood. His name was Ketil. Tall, broad-shouldered, respected throughout the region. When he spoke, people listened. We cannot allow this to continue. The room fell silent. Ketil looked around the gathering. One man disappears. He paused, then another. His eyes hardened, and then another. No one argued, because everyone knew he spoke the truth. If we do nothing, fear will rule these valleys. A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. Ketil nodded. Then we go. The decision was made. 12 men volunteered. Armed men. Experienced men. Men who knew the mountains. Men who believed courage could solve what fear had created. Within 3 days they departed. The valley watched them leave. Wives stood beside gates. Children waved. Old men offered advice. Old women offered prayer. The hunters rode northward beneath gray winter skies. Toward Juruklife. Toward the legend. Toward fate. Far above the mountain roads, Jóra watched them approach. She saw them long before they entered the pass. 12 riders. 12 beating hearts. 12 living souls. The sound reached her like distant drums. She stood upon a cliff. Snow swirled around her. The mountain whispered, always whispering, always watching. She understood immediately why the men had come. The knowledge brought no surprise, only sadness, a strange sadness. For once, long ago, she would have admired men like these, their courage, their loyalty, their willingness to protect others. Now, she simply observed, separated from them by something greater than distance. The hunters camped that evening near the lower slopes. They built fires, cooked, shared stories, laughed. Jóra listened from the darkness. The sound stirred ancient memories, memories of belonging, memories of warmth. For a moment, the loneliness became almost unbearable. She nearly turned away, nearly left them in peace. Then she heard a name. Björn, one of the hunters, mentioned it casually. A distant relative. Nothing more. Yet the sound struck her like a knife. The old wound reopened, not healed. Never healed. Merely buried. The mountain sensed it. The darkness welcomed it. Jóra closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the silver glow had returned. Brighter than before. Far below, Ketil suddenly rose from beside the fire. The others looked up. "What is it?" someone asked. The hunter stared into the darkness, toward the cliffs, toward Jóra. Though he could not truly see, I thought. His voice trailed off. "What?" Ketil frowned. For a long moment he remained silent. Then he shook his head. Nothing, but it was not nothing. Instinct had touched him. The ancient warning carried deep within every living creature. The warning prey feels when eyes are watching from the darkness. The warning mankind had spent thousands of years learning not to ignore. That night no one slept well. The wind moaned across the mountain. Strange sounds echoed among the rocks, and more than one hunter dreamed of silver eyes staring through the darkness. Morning arrived cold and clear. The hunt continued. The riders climbed higher, deeper into Juruklife, closer to the place where the mountain's shadows grew longest, closer to the place where Jóra had first entered the cave years ago, closer to the heart of the legend. By midday they found tracks, not human tracks, not animal tracks, something between the two. The marks moved across impossible terrain, straight up cliff faces, across ice-covered slopes, over rocks where no ordinary creature could travel. The hunters exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, Doubt entered their minds. Perhaps the stories were true. Perhaps they had not come searching for a woman at all. As the sun began sinking toward the horizon, the sky darkened unexpectedly. Clouds gathered. The wind strengthened. Snow drifted across the mountain road. A storm was coming. A powerful storm. Ketil studied the sky, then the tracks, then the mountains. Finally he spoke. "We make camp." No one argued. The weather left little choice, yet as they prepared their camp among the rocks, none of them noticed the figure standing far above. Watching, waiting, listening, Jóra remained motionless upon the cliff. The storm gathered around her. The darkness deepened. The mountain whispered, and for the first time in many years, something other than loneliness stirred within her. Fear, not her fear. Theirs, 12 men, 12 hearts, 12 souls, and before the storm ended, the mountain would test every one of them. For some hunts do not end with the hunters victorious. Sometimes the hunters discover they were never the ones doing the hunting. And as night descended upon Drukleif, the true hunt finally began. Chapter 12. The Storm Hunters. The storm arrived shortly after nightfall. It came from the north. Cold, sudden, merciless snow swept across the mountains in great white curtains, swallowing the landscape beneath a howling wall of wind. Within an hour, the world had vanished. The hunters could see little beyond the glow of their own campfire. Darkness pressed against them from every direction. The storm seemed alive. Watching, waiting, listening, Ketil sat beside the fire, sharpening his knife. The sound of steel against stone was steady, measured, calm, at least outwardly. Inside, he felt unease growing. Something was wrong, not merely the weather. The mountain itself felt wrong. The sensation had followed him since entering Drukleif. The feeling that unseen eyes watched every step. Across the camp, the others spoke quietly. No laughter remained now. No boasting. No confidence. Only whispers. The tracks they had found earlier haunted them. The impossible tracks. The tracks that climbed cliffs. The tracks that ignored the laws of nature. One of the younger hunters glanced into the darkness. "I don't like this place." No one disagreed. The wind, a strange sound drifted through the storm. A woman's voice, faint, almost lost beneath the howling snow. Every man froze. The voice came again. Soft, melancholy, beautiful. The sound seemed to float across the mountains themselves, not singing, calling. One of the hunters stood immediately. His face had gone pale. "Did you hear that?" The others nodded, even Ketil. The voice came a third time, closer now. The hunter stepped away from the fire, toward the darkness, toward the storm. "Wait," Ketil rose. The warning came too late. The man's expression had changed. His eyes seemed distant, dreamlike, as though listening to something only he could hear. The voice called again, and the hunter obeyed. Without another word, he walked directly into the blizzard. The darkness swallowed him instantly. The others rushed forward, shouting, calling his name. No answer came. Only wind, only snow, only silence. The men searched for nearly an hour. They found nothing. No footprints, no trace. It was as though the mountain itself had consumed him. Eventually they returned to camp. 1 man gone. 11 remained. Fear settled heavily upon them. The storm intensified. Snow piled against the rocks. The fire struggled to survive. And somewhere beyond the reach of the flames, Silver Eyes watched. Jora stood among the swirling snow. Invisible, silent, the hunter who had followed her voice knelt before her. Alive, terrified, the enchantment had broken moments ago. Now he understood his mistake. Now he understood exactly where he was. And with whom. Please, the word trembled from his lips. Jora looked down at him. The old sadness stirred within her. She remembered another life, another self, the woman she had once been. For a moment she almost turned away, almost allowed him to leave. Then she heard his heartbeat. Strong, warm, human. The emptiness inside her answered immediately. Hungrily, the mountain whispered. The darkness listened. The hunter began to cry. And Junior closed her up. Far below, the campfire burned weakly against the storm. Far above, the moon hid behind clouds. And somewhere between humanity and monstrosity, Junior made another choice. When she opened her eyes again, the silver light shone brighter than ever. The storm carried away the hunter's final scream. No one in the camp heard it. No one except Ketil. He sat upright suddenly, his heart racing. He had heard something, a sound buried within the wind, a sound he could never forget, a dying man's voice. The realization struck him instantly. They were not hunting Junior. Jora was hunting them. Morning brought no comfort. The storm continued. The missing hunter never returned. The men gathered around the dying fire. 10 remained now. Exhaustion lined every face. Fear had become impossible to hide. Ketil stood. Snow clung to his beard. His eyes scanned the surrounding darkness. We leave. No one objected. Not one. The hunt was over. Survival mattered now. Nothing else. The men packed quickly. Within minutes, they were moving downhill through the storm. Desperate to escape Eurocleaf. Desperate to reach the valleys below. But the mountain had other plans. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The road disappeared. Landmarks vanished. The storm twisted around them like a living thing. Hours passed. Yet somehow they seemed no closer to safety. The same cliffs appeared repeatedly. The same frozen stream. The same crooked rock formation. One hunter finally voiced what everyone feared. We are going in circles. Silence followed. Because everyone knew he was right. Ketil stopped. The terrible truth settled over him. The mountain would not let them leave, whether by magic, by madness, or by something even worse. They were trapped. A sudden laugh echoed through the storm. A woman's laugh. Lonely, cold, heartbreaking. Every man heard it. Every man froze. The sound drifted across the mountains. Closer, then farther away. Then closer again, as though circling them, watching them, enjoying their fear. The hunters huddled together, weapons drawn, eyes wide. Snow covered their shoulders, their beards, their hopes. And somewhere within the white chaos, a dark figure moved effortlessly between the drifting curtains of snow. Watching, waiting, choosing for the storm was no longer merely a storm. It had become a hunting ground. And Junior had finally embraced what she was becoming. The woman was fading. The legend was growing. And before dawn returned to Druklev, the hunters would learn why some names survive for centuries. Because they are written not in books, but in fear. Chapter 13. The Man Who Would Not Run. The storm raged through the night. Snow fell so heavily that earth and sky became one. The hunters stumbled blindly through the white darkness. Cold gnawed at their bones. Fear gnawed at their minds. and somewhere beyond sight, Jora watched. By midnight, only 8 men remained together. The others had vanished into the storm, some separated by confusion, some by fate. No one knew. No one wanted to know. Ketil marched at the front. His face was raw from the wind. Ice clung to his beard. Exhaustion weighed heavily upon him. Yet he refused to surrender. A leader could not afford despair, not while others still depended upon him. The mountain, however, cared little for courage. The mountain cared little for leadership. The mountain cared only for endings. A sudden gust of wind struck the group. Several men nearly lost their footing. When the snow settled once more, one of the hunters pointed ahead. There, the others turned. Through the storm, they saw a shape, a figure standing motionless atop a ridge, watching them, waiting. Even at that distance, there could be no mistake. Jora. The silver glow of her eyes pierced the darkness. One hunter immediately began praying. Another crossed himself repeatedly. A third simply stared, unable to look away. Ketil stepped forward. His hand tightened around the shaft of his spear. At last, no more whispers, no more tracks, no more shadows, only truth. The woman descended the slope. Slowly, calmly, the storm seemed to bend around her. Snow avoided her. Wind circled her. As though nature itself acknowledged her presence, the hunters backed away instinctively. All except Ketil. He stood his ground. Jora stopped several paces away. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm roared around them. The mountain listened. At last, Ketil broke the silence. "Are you Junia?" A strange expression crossed her face, something almost resembling amusement. Once, the answer unsettled him. Not because of the word because of the sadness behind it. The sadness sounded genuine. Human, Ketil studied her carefully. She appeared no older than 30. Beautiful, graceful, almost fragile. Nothing about her matched the horror stories, yet her eyes betrayed everything. Those eyes had seen too much. Too many winters, too many deaths, too much loneliness. "What happened to you?" The question escaped before he could stop it. The hunters behind him shifted uneasily. No one expected such a question. Not here. Not now. Jora remained silent. The storm howled. Finally, she looked toward the distant peaks, toward the ancient mountain that had claimed her. When she spoke, her voice sounded older than before, older than any human voice should sound. I believed pain could be buried. Snow swirled around them. I was wrong. Ketil listened. Something inside him urged caution. Another part urged compassion. For the first time, he saw not merely a monster, but a tragedy, a terrible tragedy. "You can stop this." Jora looked at him. The silver light flickered softly. "Can I?" The question carried no anger, only exhaustion. Centuries of exhaustion. Ketil took another step forward. "You were once one of us." The words lingered. For an instant, something changed. The silver light dimmed, only slightly, but enough. Memories stirred within her. Her father, the valley, the warmth of a hearth, the smell of fresh bread, the laughter of children, forgotten things, beautiful things, dangerous things. A single tear appeared upon her cheek. The hunters stared in disbelief. A monster weeping. The sight felt wrong, impossible, yet there it was, proof that some fragment of Junior still remained. Deep beneath the darkness, deep beneath the legend. Ketil saw it too. Hope flickered inside him. Perhaps she could still be saved. Perhaps the stories could end here. Perhaps. The mountain roared. The sound exploded through the storm. a deep thunder rising from beneath the earth itself. Every hunter stumbled. The ground trembled violently. Jóra froze. The tear vanished. The silver light returned. Brighter, colder, hungrier, the mountain was reminding her who she belonged to. The darkness surged through her. Ketil watched the struggle unfold. Humanity against something older, something stronger. For a moment, the outcome remained uncertain. Then the mountain whispered, and Junior bowed her head. The battle ended, not with violence, with surrender. When she raised her eyes again, the woman Ketil had almost reached was gone. Only the legend remained. Only the predator. Only the shadow of Rookleif. The hunters sensed the change immediately. Terror swept through them. One man fled, then another, then another. Panic spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the group shattered. Men disappeared into the storm, running blindly, running desperately, running toward their fate. Ketil remained. Alone, he planted the butt of his spear into the snow. The storm screamed around them. Jóra regarded him curiously. "Why do you stay?" Ketil's answer came without hesitation. "Because someone must." The words echoed across the mountain. Jóra almost smiled. Almost there had been men like him once. Long ago. Before loneliness consumed everything. Before centuries, before she forgot what courage looked like. The memory hurt. More than any blade. More than any wound. Ketil lowered his spear. Not in surrender. In understanding. "You don't want this." The silver eyes studied him. Then came the answer. The saddest answer she had spoken in many years. "It no longer matters what I want." Silence followed. Heavy, final, the mountain groaned once more. Snow swirled upward around her, the darkness gathered. And Ketil finally understood. He was not standing before a villain. He was standing before a prison. A soul trapped inside a curse too vast to escape. The realization came too late. For both of them. Jóra stepped backward into the storm. The snow swallowed her immediately. Gone, as though she had never been there. Only her voice remained, drifting through the darkness. Soft, almost mournful. "Leave this place, Ketil." The hunter stood motionless. Listening, the voice came once more, fainter now, "before the mountain decides otherwise." Then, silence returned. The storm continued. The mountain watched. And Ketil found himself alone upon the snow-covered slopes of Rookleif. Alive for reasons he did not understand. Yet deep inside he knew one terrible truth. The hunt had failed. Not because Junior could not be found, but because whatever remained of Junior was slowly losing the war. And someday, perhaps very soon, the last trace of the woman would vanish completely, leaving only the legend, only the darkness, only the terror that future generations would whisper about beside winter fires. The terror known as Jóra of Rookleif. Chapter 14. The Last Witness. Winter followed winter. Storm followed storm. Years drifted across Iceland like snow upon the wind. Children grew into adults. Adults grew old. Old men vanished into churchyards beneath moss-covered stones. The world changed. Jóra remained. The story spread farther with every passing year, no longer confined to a single valley. No longer confined even to the district. Travelers carried the legend across Iceland. Fishermen spoke of her in distant harbors. Merchants repeated her tale in crowded trading posts. Priests condemned her from pulpits. Mothers invoked her name when children refused to come indoors after dark. Be home before sunset, or Junia will find you. The words became part of the land itself, part of the wind, part of the long Icelandic, and still she walked the mountains, always alone, always watching, always haunted. Time changed everyone except her. That was the cruelest part. Not the fear, not the darkness, not even the blood. The loneliness, the endless loneliness. She watched generations pass before her eyes. Children she had once seen playing became grandparents. Farmhouses crumbled, new ones rose. Entire families disappeared from memory, yet she endured. Unchanged, forgotten by time. But never free from it. Far below, life continued. Far above, she remained trapped. A prisoner of eternity. Meanwhile, Ketil grew old. Very old. His beard turned white. His hands became stiff. His strength faded. Yet his memories never weakened. He remembered the storm. He remembered the silver eyes. Most of all, he remembered the single tear that had rolled down Jora's cheek. The proof that something human still lived within the monster. Others doubted his story. Many dismissed it entirely. Fear preferred simple explanations. People wanted monsters to be monsters. Nothing more, nothing less. The truth was harder. The truth was tragic, and tragedy makes people uncomfortable. So Ketil stopped arguing, stopped explaining, stopped trying. Instead, he simply grew old and waited, for deep inside he carried a strange certainty. One day he would see her again. One day the mountain would call him back. The opportunity came during the winter of his 73rd year. A violent storm swept across the region, one of the worst in decades. Roads vanished. Livestock perished. Entire farms disappeared beneath drifting snow. As the storm approached, strange rumors spread through the valleys. Travelers reported seeing a woman walking openly upon the mountain roads. Not hiding, not watching, walking, as though searching for something, or someone. The reports unsettled Ketil deeply. The mountain was changing. Something was happening. For 3 nights he slept poorly. On the 4th night, he made his decision. Before dawn he saddled his horse, wrapped himself against the cold, and rode toward Durukleif. His family begged him not to go. His grandchildren wept. His sons argued. Nothing changed his mind. Some journeys must be taken alone, especially the final ones. The climb nearly killed him. The old hunter was no longer young. His body protested every mile. His lungs burned. His joints ached. Yet still he climbed, toward the mountain, toward destiny, toward the legend. By sunset he reached the upper slopes. The storm gathered overhead. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. Snow drifted through the air. The world grew quiet. Ketil dismounted. The horse refused to go farther. Animals remained wiser than men. Always the old hunter continued on foot, step by painful step, until he reached the place. The same ridge, the same cliffs, the same snow-covered wilderness where he had faced Junior so many years ago. The memories returned instantly. The fear returned too. Age had not erased it. Nothing could. The wind strengthened. Darkness approached. And then she appeared, standing upon the ridge, exactly as before. Dark hair, pale skin, silver eyes. Unchanged, not a single year had touched her. Ketil suddenly felt every one of his 73 winters. Jora regarded him silently. For a long moment neither spoke. The years between them stretched like an ocean. Finally she smiled. A sad smile. A weary smile. "You came back." Ketil laughed softly. The sound carried away on the wind. "I told myself I wouldn't." The smile lingered. For the first time in decades, genuine warmth touched her face. Only briefly, but enough. "You are old." Ketil looked at his hands, at the wrinkles, at the scars, at the evidence of a life fully lived. That happens. Something flickered within Jóra's eyes. Not envy. Not quite. Something deeper. Something more painful. I had forgotten. The words struck Ketil harder than any weapon, because he understood exactly what she meant. She had forgotten what it felt like to age, to change, to move naturally toward an ending, to belong to time itself. A silence settled between them. The storm circled overhead. The mountain listened. Finally, Ketil asked the question he had carried for decades, the question no one else dared ask. "Are you suffering?" Jóra did not answer immediately. The wind tugged at her hair. Snow drifted around her. At last she spoke. Every day. The honesty stunned him. No anger, no lies, only truth. The terrible truth of eternity. Ketil lowered his head. For the first time, he truly pitied her. Not feared. Pitied, and in that moment something shifted. Not in him, in her. For centuries, mankind had feared Jóra, hunted her, hated her. Yet this old man offered something else. Compassion. The one thing she no longer believed existed. The silver light within her eyes dimmed slightly. The storm weakened. Even the mountain seemed to hesitate, as though something impossible had begun. For the first time in centuries, Jóra remembered hope. And far beneath the mountain, something ancient stirred uneasily. For ancient darkness fears many things, but few things frighten it more than a soul that remembers how to hope. Chapter 15. The Conversation Beneath the Storm. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind moved softly across the slopes of Jóra. Snow drifted through the gathering darkness. Above them, the clouds rolled slowly across the sky. Below them, the valleys slept. Ketil stood leaning upon his walking staff. Jóra remained motionless upon the ridge. Two figures separated by more than years. Separated by fate itself. Yet somehow, for the first time, neither seemed afraid. At last, Jóra broke the silence. "Why do you pity me?" The question sounded almost childlike, as though she genuinely could not understand. Ketil studied her. Not the silver eyes, not the unnatural stillness, not the legend. The woman trapped beneath all of it. "Because I have lived long enough." Jóra frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" The old hunter smiled. "A young man sees enemies. The wind carried away his words. An old man sees wounds." Something moved behind her eyes. A memory, perhaps. A forgotten feeling. Ketil continued. "When I first met you, I saw a monster." The honesty surprised her. "But now?" Ketil looked toward the mountains, toward the endless wilderness surrounding them. "Now I see someone who never escaped her." The words struck harder than any accusation, harder than any weapon, because they were true. Jóra looked away. For centuries she had endured hatred, fear, violence, yet kindness remained unbearable. Kindness reached places darkness could not protect. The silence stretched. Finally she spoke. "You think grief created this?" She gestured toward herself, toward the silver eyes, toward the curse. Ketil nodded. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You understand very little." Perhaps the old hunter shrugged. That is also part of growing old. For the first time in many years, genuine amusement touched Jóra's face. Only briefly, but enough. The sight startled them both. Then, the moment faded. The mountain groaned softly beneath their feet. always a reminder. Jora's expression darkened. You should leave. Ketil ignored the warning. Can it be broken? The question hung in the air. The storm seemed to pause. The mountain seemed to listen. Even Junia stood motionless. At last she answered. No, the word came too quickly. Too automatically. Ketil noticed. That is not what I asked. Jora turned away, looking toward the dark cliff, toward the place where everything had begun. Far above them, lightning flickered within distant clouds. A pale blue flash. Cold, unnatural, the old hunter waited. Patiently, years had taught him the value of patience. Finally, Junior spoke again. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I do not know. The confession seemed to cost her dearly, because for centuries she had stopped asking, stopped hoping, stopped believing. The ancient darkness beneath the mountain had convinced her of its permanence, its inevitability, its victory. Yet now doubt had returned. And doubt is dangerous to every prison. Ketil stepped closer. Pain shot through his aging legs. He ignored it. Then why stay? Jora laughed softly. A broken sound. Where would I go? The question carried centuries of despair. Look at me. She turned toward him. The silver light intensified. Look at what I am. Ketil did, and saw something she did not expect. Not horror, not fear. Compassion, again, always compassion. The thing she could not defend against. You are still Junia. The words echoed through the storm. The mountain trembled. A distant rumble rolled beneath the earth. Jora's face tightened. Something deep below it heard. Something ancient. Something hungry. Something angry. The darkness beneath Urukleif did not like this conversation. It did not like hope. It did not like forgiveness. Most of all, it did not like being remembered. The ground shook again. Stronger this time. Snow slid from nearby cliffs. The wind rose suddenly. Jora stepped backward. Alarm flashed across her face. For the first time in centuries, she looked afraid. Truly afraid. Ketil noticed immediately. What is it? Her eyes fixed upon the mountain. Listening. Hearing something beyond human hearing. The answer came slowly. It knows. The old hunter frowned. What knows? Jora's gaze never left the cliffs. The silver light flickered violently. The storm strengthened. The mountain groaned. Deep, ancient, alive. Then she finally answered. The thing beneath the mountain. A terrible silence followed. Ketil suddenly remembered the story she had once told him. The ancient presence. The power older than kings. Older than churches. Older than memory itself. A presence she had awakened long ago. And now, it was awake again. Not stirring. Awake, the realization chilled him more than the winter wind. Far below, somewhere beneath layers of stone and darkness, a deep vibration echoed through the earth, like a heartbeat. Slow, powerful, impossible, once, twice, 3 times. The mountain answered each pulse. Jora closed her eyes. Pain crossed her face, real pain, as though invisible chains had suddenly tightened around her soul. Ketil stepped forward, instinctively, wanting to help, wanting to do something, anything. Jora opened her eyes. Fear filled them, not for herself, for him. Go, the word came sharply, urgently. Now the old hunter remained where he was. No, the mountain shook again. A crack split the snow-covered ground nearby. Blue light flashed briefly from the darkness below. Jora's voice rose. For the first time since they met, genuine panic entered it. Ketil. The old hunter stared at her, and suddenly understood. The mountain feared losing her. The darkness feared her. The darkness feared freedom, which meant freedom was possible. The realization struck like lightning. Jóra saw it in his eyes, saw understanding bloom, saw hope ignite. And for one brief, beautiful moment, she felt it too. Hope, the feeling she thought had died centuries ago. The feeling she believed the darkness had stolen forever. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then another, and somewhere beneath Jóra, something ancient roared with fury. The battle had begun. Not between hunters and monsters, not between man and beast, but between despair and hope, between captivity and freedom, between the darkness beneath the mountain and the woman it had imprisoned for centuries. Far above, lightning illuminated this, and for the first time in countless years, Jóra dared to believe that the story might not end the way the mountain intended. Chapter 16. The Heart Beneath the Mountain. The storm broke before dawn. Not gradually, not naturally. It ended as though an unseen hand had torn the clouds apart. One moment the mountain howled. The next, silence. A silence so complete that even the wind seemed afraid to move. Ketil stood upon the ridge, breathing heavily. Jóra remained a short distance. Neither had spoken since the mountain's furious roar. The darkness beneath Jóra had heard them. It had listened, and now it knew. The old hunter slowly turned toward the cliffs. Far above, the sky brightened with the first pale light of morning. Yet something else drew his attention. The mountain. The entire mountain seemed different. The stone beneath his feet pulsed faintly, like a living thing, like a sleeping giant shifting in uneasy dreams. Jóra felt it too. Her face had become pale. The silver light within her eyes flickered violently. The chains are tightening. Ketil looked at her. What chains? She hesitated, as though speaking the truth aloud might somehow strengthen it. Finally, she answered. The darkness never gave me power. Her voice sounded hollow. It gave me a prison. The words settled heavily between them. For centuries, she had believed the mountain itself was her source of strength. Now, she understood the truth. The power had never belonged to her. She had merely been carrying it, feeding it, serving it. The realization terrified her, because if the darkness lost control, it would come for her. Directly, for the first, far below, deep within the mountain, another pulse echoed through the earth. Stronger, closer, a crack appeared in the snow-covered stone nearby. Blue light spilled briefly from the darkness beneath. Ketil stepped back. The sight chilled him more than any winter wind. What is waking up? Jóra closed her eyes. Listening, the answer emerged as little more than a whisper. The thing that found me, a distant rumble, rolled through the mountain. Ancient, angry, hungry. The old hunter suddenly understood. For centuries, people had feared Junia. They had believed she was the monster. But perhaps they had been looking in the wrong direction all along. Jóra had never been the true horror. She had been its prisoner, its servant, its mask. The real darkness had always remained hidden beneath the mountain. Waiting, growing, watching, the realization struck him like ice water. And from the look on Junior's face, she knew it too. A sudden scream echoed across the cliffs. Both turned immediately. Far below, near one of the old mountain paths, a figure stumbled through the snow. A young man, no more than 20, a traveler, lost, alone, and running from something. The scream came again, closer this time. The traveler fell, rose again, then pointed toward the mountains behind him, toward a narrow ravine, toward a darkness moving where no darkness should move. Ketil narrowed his eyes. At first he thought it was a shadow. Then he realized shadows do not move against the light. This one did. The thing emerging from the ravine possessed no clear shape, no clear form. It seemed made of smoke, of darkness, of living night itself. The air around it shimmered unnaturally. Snow melted wherever it passed. The traveler screamed once more. Jóra stared, frozen, not from fear, from recognition. No, the word escaped her lips, barely audible. No, the darkness continued advancing. Slowly, patiently, like a predator already certain of its prey. The traveler never stood a chance. Yet before the thing could reach him, something unexpected happened. Jóra moved. For the first time in centuries, she ran toward danger instead of away from it. Toward the darkness, toward the source of her curse, toward the thing that had stolen her life. Ketil watched in disbelief. The silver light exploded within her eyes. Snow swirled around her. The mountain trembled. The traveler stared, unable to comprehend what he was witnessing. Monster against monster. Legend against night. Jóra reached the young man first. She placed herself between him and the approaching darkness. The shadow halted. For the first time, it recognized her. The air vibrated. A voice emerged. Not spoken, not heard. Felt inside the mind, inside the bones, inside the soul. You belong to me. The words struck like thunder. The traveler collapsed instantly. Unconscious, Ketil nearly fell. Only Jóra remained standing. Her face hardened. For centuries she had obeyed. For centuries she had submitted. For centuries she had accepted her fate. Not today. The silver light burned brighter. And when she spoke, her voice carried across the mountains, across the valleys, across every year of suffering she had endured. No. The single word echoed like a challenge. The darkness surged forward. The mountain, and for the first time since the day she entered the cave beneath Drukleif, Jóra chose to fight. Not for power, not for revenge, not for herself, but for another human being. And deep within her heart, beneath centuries of grief and loneliness, something long thought dead stirred once more. The woman she had once been. The woman the darkness had never completely destroyed. The true battle had begun. Not for the mountain, not for the valley, but for Jóra's soul itself. Chapter 17. The First Defiance. The darkness advanced. Slowly, relentlessly, it flowed across the snow like spilled ink. No footsteps, no sound, only a terrible absence. An absence of warmth, an absence of life, an absence of everything that belonged to the world of men. Jóra stood between it and the fallen traveler. The young man lay unconscious behind her, his face pale, his breath shallow. Alive. For now. The shadow halted a few paces away. The mountain groaned beneath their feet. The sky darkened once more, though dawn had already arrived. Nature itself seemed uncertain which force to obey. The ancient darkness, or the woman standing against it. For centuries there would have been no conflict. Jóra would have bowed her head. Obeyed. Submitted. Not today. The silver light within her eyes blazed like moonfire. The shadow rippled, its shape constantly shifting. Faces emerged briefly from within it. Hundreds of faces. Men, women, children, the dead. The forgotten. The consumed. All trapped within its endless darkness. Ketil stared in horror. The stories had never prepared him for this. Nothing could. The voice came again, not through the air, directly into the mind. You were given purpose. The mountain trembled. You were given power. Snow exploded upward around them. You were given eternity. Jora's hands clenched. Memories flooded her thoughts. The cave, the bargain, the years, the blood, the loneliness, the endless winters, the endless nights. Then another memory surfaced. Her father's smile. Warm bread upon a wooden table. The smell of rain upon summer grass. A young woman laughing beside a river. Before everything, before the darkness, before the curse. The silver light brightened. I was given nothing. Her voice remained calm. Yet the mountain shook at the words. The shadow surged violently. The imprisoned faces screamed. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. The sound echoed across the cliffs. Ketil covered his ears. The traveler stirred weakly in the snow. The darkness towered higher. Larger, more terrible. You belong to ME. The words carried the weight of centuries. Jora took one step forward, then another, toward the thing, toward the source, toward the nightmare. And suddenly she understood something she had never understood before. The darkness had lied. Not once, not twice. Always, every promise, every gift, every bargain, all lies. It had never removed her pain. It had merely replaced it. It had never ended her loneliness. It had fed upon it. It had never made her strong. It had made her dependent. The realization struck like lightning. The chains were not physical. They never had been. They were made of despair. The belief that escape was impossible. The belief that she was lost forever. The belief that the woman she once was had died. And for the first time in centuries, she stopped. The mountain reacted immediately. A crack split the earth. Blue fire erupted from deep below. The darkness recoiled, only slightly, but enough. Enough to reveal something astonishing. It was afraid. Ketil saw it. Jora saw it. Even the mountain seemed to know it. The ancient power beneath Jóra was afraid. Not of weapons, not of death, of freedom. The shadow roared. The sound shattered stone. The traveler awoke screaming. Snow cascaded from nearby cliffs. Far below, avalanches thundered through distant valleys. And then the darkness attacked. Not with claws, not with teeth, with memories. Agony exploded through Junior's mind. She saw Born leaving once more. Saw the betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliation. Every wound reopened, every sorrow returned. The darkness fed upon pain. Always had. The vision deepened. Now she saw herself wandering alone for centuries, watching everyone die, watching everything fade. The loneliness became unbearable. The temptation returned. The temptation to surrender, to stop fighting, to accept the prison once more. The shadow whispered, "Rest." The word carried terrible comfort. Let go. Jora fell to one knee. The silver light flickered. Weakening, Ketil watched helplessly. The old hunter could do nothing. Nothing except speak. And so he did. Jora, his voice barely rose above the wind. Yet she heard it. Jora, again the name. Not monster, not spirit, not legend. Jora, the woman, the person, the forgotten soul. Tears filled her eyes. For centuries, people had spoken her name with fear. Only fear. Now someone spoke it with kindness, with faith, with hope. The darkness screamed, the mountain shook. And Junior rose. Slowly, painfully, but she rose. The silver light returned, brighter than before, stronger than before. The shadow recoiled. The imprisoned faces within it twisted in terror. For the first time since the bargain had been made, the balance was changing. The woman was awakening, and the darkness knew it. High above the cliffs, sunlight finally broke through the clouds. A single beam, golden, warm, pure, it touched the snow. Then the mountain, then Junia herself. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in centuries she felt warmth. Not power, not magic, not darkness. Warmth, the simple warmth of the living world. The thing she thought she had lost forever. When she opened her eyes again, the silver glow had changed. Somewhere deep within it burned a new light. A human light. The darkness saw it and trembled. Because after centuries of victory for the first time, it was losing. Chapter 18. The mountain remembers. The sunlight lasted only a moment, then the clouds closed once more. Yet something had changed, something irreversible. The warmth remained, not upon the mountain, not within the storm, within Junia. The ancient darkness felt it immediately, and it recoiled. For centuries it had fed upon despair, upon loneliness, upon hopelessness. Hope was poisoned. The shadow twisted violently across the snow. Its countless imprisoned faces writhed beneath the black surface. Screaming, begging, mourning, the sound echoed through every valley surrounding Druklife. Miles away, shepherds paused in confusion. Farmers looked toward the mountains. Dogs began barking. Children awoke from uneasy sleep. Something was happening. Something the land itself could feel. Jóra stepped forward. The traveler behind her struggled to his feet. Ketil remained motionless, watching, witnessing, understanding. The story had changed. This was no longer a battle between hunter and monster. This was the final reckoning between a soul and its captor. The darkness gathered itself, growing larger. The sky darkened in response. Blue lightning flashed above the peaks. The mountain grew deep below. Ancient stone cracked. The voice returned, louder than before. You cannot escape what you are. The words rolled across the landscape like thunder. Jóra stood her ground. The old fear tried to return. The old despair. The old certainty that resistance was futile. Yet now another voice existed beside it. Smaller, quieter, but stronger. Her own. I know what I am. The darkness hesitated. The answer had not been expected. For centuries she had defined herself through the curse, through the pain, through the monster. No longer. I am Junia. The silver light brightened. The mountain shook. The shadow surged forward again. This time it struck directly. A wave of darkness crashed into her. Memories exploded through her mind. Centuries of violence. Centuries of death. Every traveler. Every victim. Every terrible thing she had done. The burden crushed down upon her. The weight was unbearable. Jóra cried out, fell to one knee. The darkness pressed harder. Relentlessly, look what you have become. The faces of the dead surrounded her, accusing, mourning, condemning, and for a moment she nearly broke. The guilt was too great, the sorrow too deep. The darkness sensed victory. It moved closer, like a predator approaching wounded prey. Then Ketil spoke. Once, only once. Look again. Jóra lifted her head. The old hunter pointed not toward the dead, but toward the traveler she had saved. The young man stood trembling in the snow. Alive. Alive because of her. Alive because she had chosen differently. Alive because she had fought. The realization struck like sunlight breaking through clouds. The past could not be changed. but the future could. The dead could not be saved, but the living could. Tears streamed down her face, not tears of despair, tears of understanding. The darkness screamed, the mountain roared, and for the first time in centuries, Jóra forgave herself. Not completely, not all at once, but enough. Enough to loosen the chains, enough to weaken the prison, enough to frighten the thing beneath the mountain. The effect was immediate. The silver light exploded outward. A wave of brilliance swept across the cliffs. Snow erupted into the air. The shadow recoiled violently. Its imprisoned faces began disappearing, one by one, like sparks fading into the night. The darkness thrashed. The mountain cracked. Great fissures opened across the slope. Blue fire burst from the earth. Ketil shielded his eyes. The traveler collapsed again, and Junia stood at the center of it all. For the first time, she no longer looked like a monster, nor like a spirit, nor like a legend. She simply looked like a woman. A tired woman, a wounded woman, a woman who had carried sorrow for far too long. The darkness saw it, and feared it. Because legends can be controlled, monsters can be manipulated. But a soul that remembers its humanity becomes dangerous. Very dangerous. The shadow retreated toward the cliffs, toward the hidden cave, toward the place where everything had begun, the place where the bargain had first been made. Jóra watched it go, and suddenly she knew. The battle would not end here. Not on the mountain road, not beneath the storm. The darkness had retreated home to its source, to its heart. And if she wished to end the curse forever, she would have to follow. The realization settled over her quietly, inevitably like the final page of a story already written. Ketil saw it in her eyes. You know where it must end. Jóra nodded. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the old hunter smiled. A weary smile. A proud smile. The smile of a man who had waited a lifetime to witness this moment. You won't go alone. Jóra almost laughed. A real laugh. The first in centuries. You are too old. Ketil looked toward the mountain, toward the darkness waiting beneath it, then back toward her. Probably, the answer made her smile again. Briefly, sadly, beautifully far below, the valleys remained unaware of what was unfolding above them. They did not know the legend was nearing its end. They did not know the mountain was beginning to lose. They did not know the woman they feared was fighting to save them. But soon, they would. For the path now led back to the cave. Back to the bargain. Back to the ancient heart of darkness beneath Jóra. And there, one final truth awaited them all. The truth of how the story began, and how it must. Chapter 19. The Cave of the First Bargain. Night fell as they climbed. The storm had passed, yet the mountain remained restless. Cracks spread across the slopes like dark scars. Blue light glowed from deep beneath the earth. The ancient darkness was wounded, and wounded creatures are often the most dangerous. Ketil, Jóra, and the young traveler moved slowly through the gathering twilight. The traveler had finally found his voice. His name was Arnar, a shepherd's son from a distant valley. Young, strong, still struggling to understand what he had witnessed. Several times he glanced toward Junia, the legendary terror of Jóra, the monster from countless stories. Yet the woman walking beside him seemed nothing like the creature described in those tales. She seemed tired. Burdened, human, the realization confused him, as legends often do when seen up close. The cave appeared shortly before midnight, hidden among jagged cliffs, exactly where Junia had first discovered it all those centuries ago. Nothing had changed, not truly. The entrance remained narrow. Dark, silent, waiting, a cold wind emerged from within, carrying the scent of ancient stone, ancient secrets, ancient sorrow. Jora stopped. For a moment she simply stared. Memories flooded her mind. The young woman she had once been. The heartbreak, the loneliness, the terrible choice. Everything had begun here. Everything. Ketil stepped beside her. "Are you ready?" Jora did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the stars above. How many times had she seen these same stars? 100 winters? 200? More? Entire generations had lived and died beneath them. Yet they remained unchanged. Like the mountain. Like her. Until now. Finally, she nodded. Yes, together they entered. The cave seemed larger than before. Or perhaps the years had altered her memory. Blue fire still burned from cracks in the stone. The ancient symbols still covered the walls. But something else had changed. The darkness. Once it had felt powerful. Invincible. Now it felt desperate. The deeper they traveled, the more obvious it became. The mountain trembled constantly. The shadows moved restlessly. The air itself seemed anxious. Afraid, Jora felt it. The ancient thing knew she was coming. And it was preparing. The passage eventually opened into the great cavern. The same cavern. The same black, the same impossible chamber hidden beneath the heart of Yuruklife. Yet the lake was no longer calm. Its surface churned violently. Dark waves crashed against invisible shores. The cavern echoed with distant screams. Not human screams. Something older. Something deeper. The ancient darkness was unraveling. Ketil stared in amazement. No story could have prepared him for this place. No legend had ever described its true scale, its true horror. The Black Lake suddenly erupted. A massive column of darkness rose from its depths, higher, higher, until it touched the cavern ceiling itself. Faces emerged within it. Thousands of faces, the same imprisoned souls, the same suffering, the same endless hunger. And at the center of it all glowed two terrible eyes. Ancient, infinite, furious. The cavern shook. Stone shattered. Blue fire erupted from every crack. The voice came at once. No longer a whisper. No longer distant. A roar. You return. The words slammed through the cavern. Arnar fell to his knees. Ketil nearly collapsed. Only Junior remained standing. The ancient darkness focused entirely upon her. After everything I gave you, Jora stepped forward. The silver light within her eyes remained steady. I know the truth now. The darkness surged. The lake exploded outward. You know nothing. Its anger shook the mountain. Outside, avalanches thundered across distant slopes. Yet Junia did not retreat. For the first time in centuries, she felt no fear. Only clarity. Only purpose. You fed on my pain. The darkness roared. You fed on my loneliness. The cavern trembled. You fed on every wound I carried. The faces within the darkness twisted violently. Because every word was true. And truth wounds lies more deeply than any blade. The ancient being rose even higher. The ceiling cracked. Stone rained downward. The mountain itself seemed on the verge of collapse. Then the darkness spoke words that froze every soul present. You came to Emmy willingly. Silence followed. Jora stopped. The accusation hung in the air. Heavy, terrible, true, for she had come willingly. No chains had dragged her here. No force had compelled her. The choice had been hers. The realization cut deeply. The darkness sensed weakness. Immediately it pressed harder. You chose this. The Black Lake churned. You created your own prison. Jora lowered her head. For a moment the silver light flickered. Catil watched anxiously. The darkness was right, at least partly. The bargain had been hers. The choice had been hers. The responsibility belonged to her. The cavern darkened. The ancient power sensed victory. Then, something unexpected happened. Jora smiled. A small smile. A wise smile. The darkness hesitated. Confused I did. The answer echoed softly, yet it carried enormous weight. I chose. The cavern grew still. I chose badly. Tears filled her eyes. But I chose. The darkness recoiled. Jora raised her head. The silver light returned, brighter than ever, which means I can choose again. For the first time since the beginning of time, the ancient thing beneath Euryclea felt something it had never expected to feel. Fear, real fear. The fear of losing. And throughout the mountain, ancient chains began to break, one by one. Chapter 20. The breaking of the chains. The mountain screamed. Not with the voice of wind, not with the voice of stone, but with something far older, something wounded, something afraid. Cracks raced across the cavern walls. Blue fire burst from the earth. The Black Lake churned violently. And for the first time since Junia had entered this place centuries ago, the ancient darkness was losing control. The realization filled the cavern like a storm. The countless faces trapped within the shadow twisted and shifted. Not in rage, in hope. The imprisoned souls had felt it too. The chains were breaking. The ancient being towered above them. Immense, terrible, its shape no longer stable. The darkness flickered. Fragments of shadow tore loose and dissolved into the air. The thing was yet it remained unimaginably dangerous. The eyes fixed upon Junior, burning with hatred. You dare defy me? The words shook the cavern. Jora stood firm. For centuries those words would have crushed her. Not now. She finally understood something that had remained hidden all these years. The darkness had never truly ruled her. It had ruled her fear. It had ruled her belief that she could never change. Once those things weakened, its power weakened too. The ancient being sensed her realization and panicked. The entire mountain shook violently. Stone crashed from above. The Black Lake surged outward. A wall of darkness rushed toward her. Arnar cried out. Catil grabbed the young man and pulled him behind a stone pillar. The wave struck. Jura vanished within it. The cavern exploded with shadow. For a moment nothing could be seen. Nothing. Only darkness. Only screams. Only chaos. Then came silence. A terrible silence. The darkness slowly withdrew. And there, standing exactly where she had been before, stood Junia. Unmoved, untouched, the silver light surrounding her had changed. It no longer resembled moonlight, nor magic, nor anything connected to the mountain. It felt warmer now. Brighter. Human. The ancient being recoiled. For the first time its voice sounded uncertain. What have you done? Jira looked at her hands. Then, at the countless faces trapped within the darkness. Faces she now recognized, not individually, but spiritually. All of them had suffered. All of them had made mistakes. All of them had carried grief, just as she had. The difference was simple. She had finally forgiven herself. And forgiveness was something the darkness could neither understand nor survive. Jora stepped toward the lake, the ancient being retreated. Another impossible sight. The predator was retreating. The prisoner was advancing. The cavern trembled. Ancient chains appeared throughout the chamber. Chains made of dark, massive, endless. They stretched from the creature into the mountain itself, into the souls trapped within it, into Junia. For the first time, she could see them clearly. The true prison. Not stone, not magic. Bondage, fear, despair, self-hatred. Every chain represented a wound. Every chain represented a surrender. The ancient being roared, "You belong here." Jora shook her head. No. The first chain shattered. The sound echoed like thunder. The mountain groaned. The darkness screamed. Another chain broke. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. The entire cavern filled with the sound of breaking bonds. The imprisoned faces began to disappear. Not dying. Released, freed. One by one they vanished into light. Arnar stared in amazement. Ketil felt tears fill his old eyes. He was witnessing something no human being had ever seen. The ending of a curse. The ancient being shrank, its enormous form becoming smaller, weaker, less certain. The fear in its eyes grew. Real fear. The fear of extinction. The fear of irrelevance. The fear of truth. Then the creature spoke words that shocked everyone. "If I die, you die with me." Silence filled the cavern. Even the mountain paused. Jora understood immediately. Of course, their lives had become intertwined. The bargain, the centuries, the curse. Destroying the darkness might destroy her as well. Ketil stepped forward. No, the old hunter's voice trembled. There must be another way. Jora looked at him, at the old man who had given her hope, the man who had reminded her she was still human, the man who had saved her soul. A gentle smile touched her face, the same smile she might have worn as a young woman centuries ago, before heartbreak, before darkness, before Drukleif. Perhaps there was another way, perhaps not. Either way, she finally felt peace. True peace. For the first time since Born rode away, for the first time in centuries, the ancient being saw it and understood. Its victory had become impossible because the one thing it needed most had vanished. Despair. Jora stepped forward again, toward the heart of the darkness, toward the end, and as she did, the cavern filled with a warm golden light that had no source, no fire, no sun, no magic, only hope. The oldest power in the world, and the one force the darkness had never learned how to defeat. Chapter 21. The choice. The golden light continued to spread, slowly, gently, like dawn arriving after an endless winter night. The darkness recoiled from it. Every inch of ground touched by the light became unbearable to the ancient being. The black lake began to shrink, its waters evaporating into mist. The cavern itself was changing. Ancient symbols carved into the stone walls started to glow. Not blue, not silver. Gold, the color of sunrise, the color of life, the color of beginnings. The ancient darkness twisted violently, its once mighty form now broken and unstable. Faces emerged and vanished within it. Thousands of imprisoned souls, thousands of forgotten lives, each one slipping beyond its grasp. The creature screamed, not with anger, with terror. For the first time in ages, it understood exactly what was happening. Its reign was ending. Jora walked toward it, calmly, without fear, without hatred. That was the strangest thing of all. She no longer hated it. Hatred had bound her to the darkness almost as tightly as despair. Now both were gone. Only understanding remained. The creature sensed this, and hated it more than anything. Destroy me. Its voice shook the cavern. End us both. Jora stopped. Only a few paces separated them now. The golden light surrounded her completely. Ketil watched from the edge of the cavern. Arnar beside him. Neither dared move, neither dared speak. This choice belonged to Junior alone. The darkness rose higher, its form collapsing and rebuilding continuously. You know the truth. The eyes burned. We are connected. The mountain groaned. If I fall, you fall. Jura nodded. She already knew. She had known from the moment the creature revealed it. The bargain had linked them. For centuries, its existence sustained hers. Its destruction would almost certainly claim her life. The realization should have frightened her. Instead, she felt strangely peaceful because for the first time in centuries, she understood the difference between existing and living. She had existed for hundreds of years, but she had not truly lived, not since the day she entered this cave. The darkness laughed, a desperate sound, a dying sound. Then choose. The cavern shook, eternity or death. The choice seemed simple, yet it was not, because death no longer frightened Junia, not after centuries, not after endless loneliness, not after carrying a burden no human soul was meant to bear. She turned her head slightly, looking toward Ketil. The old hunter stood silently. Tears glistened in his eyes. He knew. Of course he knew. The ending stood before them both. Ketil lowered his head, then slowly placed one hand over his heart, not as a farewell, as a sign of respect, a sign of gratitude, a sign of friendship. Jora smiled, a real smile. Perhaps the first truly happy smile she had worn since childhood. Then she looked toward Arnar. The young traveler stared at her, not with fear, not with horror, with wonder. He would survive. He would return home. He would tell the story, not of a monster, but of a woman who fought the darkness. The realization comforted her. At last she faced the ancient being, the thing beneath the mountain, the source of every nightmare, every tragedy, every stolen year. The creature's eyes narrowed. It already understood. No. The word left Junra's lips softly. The darkness froze. No to eternity. The golden light brightened. No to despair. The cavern trembled. No to fear. The mountain roared. And finally, no to you. The ancient being screamed. The sound shattered stone. The ceiling cracked. The black lake erupted. The entire mountain seemed to tear itself apart. Yet Junior remained calm. The golden light surrounding her expanded. It touched the darkness. And wherever it touched, the shadow dissolved. Not burned, not destroyed. Released, the imprisoned souls emerged like stars, thousands upon thousands, rising into the air, filling the cavern, filling the mountain, filling the darkness itself. Each soul carried a fragment of light, a fragment of freedom, a fragment of peace. The ancient being shrank rapidly, its enormous form collapsing inward, its power unraveling, its screams fading, its hatred weakening, until finally only the eyes remained, two pale lights floating above the dying lake, watching Junia. The creature spoke one final time, its voice no longer terrible, no longer powerful, only tired. Why? Jora thought for a moment, then answered honestly. Because suffering must end somewhere. The eyes closed. The darkness vanished. And the mountain fell silent. Completely silent. For the first time since the beginning of memory, the curse was broken. The bargain ended. The prison destroyed. The cavern filled with golden light. Beautiful, warm, peaceful Junior stood at its center. The silver glow faded from her eyes. The centuries slipped away. And somewhere deep inside, the young woman she had once been finally came home. Then, her knees weakened. Ketil cried out. Arnar rushed forward. But both already knew the bargain was ending. And the price was... Chapter 22. The Last Goodbye. The golden light filled the cavern. Warm, gentle, endless. For a moment it seemed as though the mountain itself had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. The darkness was gone. The screams were gone. The terrible weight that had lingered beneath Rookleaf for generations had vanished. Only peace remained. Jora swayed slightly. Ketil reached her first. The old hunter caught her before she fell. For a brief moment they simply stood there. The old man and the woman he had spent a lifetime trying to understand. Jora looked into his weathered face. The wrinkles, the gray beard, the tired eyes. All the marks of a life fully lived. How strange, she thought. How beautiful. For centuries she had envied immortality. Now she understood the truth. The beauty of life came from its ending. Without endings, nothing mattered. Without endings, nothing was precious. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Not from sadness, from gratitude. The silver glow had disappeared completely now. Her eyes were no longer those of a legend. They were simply human. For the first time in centuries, Ketil saw it immediately and smiled. You came back. The words were little more than a whisper. Jora smiled faintly. So did you. The old hunter laughed softly. A weary laugh. A happy laugh. The kind that comes at the end of a long journey. Around them the cavern continued changing. The ancient symbols faded. The blue fires disappeared. The black lake became clear. Crystal clear. For the first time its waters reflected the world of stars, moonlight, life. The prison had become a mirror. The curse had become a memory. Arnar stood nearby, speechless, witnessing the end of a story older than any man alive. Jora looked toward him. The young traveler suddenly felt very small beneath her gaze. Not because she was frightening, because she was kind. Tell them the truth. Arnar swallowed. What truth? Jora's smile deepened. The truth they forgot. Silence followed. Then she continued. I was never the mountain. Her voice echoed softly through the cavern. I was only lost inside it. The words settled deep inside him. A lesson, a warning, a gift. Jora looked away. Toward the distant light now shining from the mouth of the cave. Toward dawn. Toward the world. Toward home. A strange peace settled over her. For the first time since her youth, she felt no loneliness, no anger, no regret, only peace. The feeling was unfamiliar, yet wonderful. Her strength continued fading. The centuries were catching up. The bargain had preserved her for generations. Now time had returned to collect its debt. Ketil felt it too. His expression changed. The smile remained, but sadness appeared behind it. You are leaving. It was not a question. Jora nodded. Yes, the old hunter lowered his head. For a moment neither spoke. Words seemed too small, too fragile. Then Junior gently placed her hand upon his shoulder. The gesture surprised them both. Such simple human contact. Such a small thing. Such a powerful thing. Thank you. Ketil looked up. His eyes glistened. For what? Jora's smile became brighter. For an instant, she looked exactly as she might have looked centuries ago. Before sorrow. Before darkness. Before the mountain. For remembering my name. The old hunter closed his eyes, unable to answer, unable to trust his voice. The golden light surrounding Junior brightened. Softly, like sunrise upon fresh snow, her form began to shimmer. Not disappearing. Changing, returning. The years slipped away from her face. The burden lifted from her shoulders. The sorrow left her eyes. She looked young, the young woman who had once dreamed beside rivers. The young woman who had believed in love. The young woman who had walked into the mountain long ago. At last she was free. The light grew brighter. Arnar shielded his eyes. Ketil did not. He refused to look away. Some moments deserve to be witnessed fully, no matter how much they hurt. Jora looked toward the sky one final time, toward the stars, toward eternity. Then she smiled. A smile without sorrow, without fear, without loneliness. A smile of peace, and the light embraced her. When it faded, she was gone. No scream, no tragedy, no darkness. Only silence, only peace, only the memory of a woman who had finally found her way home. Ketil remained standing for a long time, the cavern quiet around him, the dawn approaching. At last the old hunter spoke, softly, to no one and everyone. Goodbye, Jóra. The words drifted upward, out of the cave, across the mountain, across the valleys, into the morning wind. And somewhere beyond the reach of sorrow, a soul finally rested. Epilogue. The story that remained. Spring came early that year. The snow melted from the lower valleys. Rivers swelled with fresh water from the mountains. Birds returned from distant shores. Life continued, as life always does. Yet something had changed. People noticed it immediately. The road through Jórukleif no longer felt wrong. Travelers crossed the pass without unease. Horses no longer shied away from the cliffs. Dogs no longer barked at empty darkness. The mountain seemed quieter, lighter, freer. No one could explain it. But everyone felt it. The old fear had vanished, like mist beneath sunlight. Ketil returned home several days later, older than ever, weaker than before, yet somehow at peace. People gathered around him, demanding answers, demanding explanations. Had he seen her? Was she real? Had the stories been true? The old hunter simply smiled. Then he told them. Not every detail, not every secret. Some truths belong to the mountain, some belong to Junior alone. But he told enough for people to understand, enough for people to remember, enough for people to learn. And slowly the story changed. Children still heard the name Junior, but now the tale sounded different. Not a monster hiding in the darkness, not a demon stalking travelers. Not merely a warning, a tragedy, a lesson, a reminder of what grief can become when left alone, of what darkness can do when fed by despair, and of how even the most lost soul can find its way home. Years passed. Ketil grew older still. The time eventually came when he could no longer climb mountains, could no longer hunt, could no longer travel. Instead, he sat beside the fire, just as old men have always done. And he told stories. again and again. The children loved one story above all others. The story of Junia, always Junia. They listened with wide eyes, holding their breath, waiting for the ending, waiting for the moment when the darkness broke, waiting for the moment when hope won. One winter evening, a little girl interrupted him. Was she beautiful? The question made the old hunter smile. Very slowly he nodded. Yes, the child considered this. Did you love her? The room fell silent. The adults exchanged surprised glances. Katil laughed softly, then looked into the fire, watching memories dance among the flames. At last he answered. No, the children looked confused. The old hunter smiled again. But I cared what happened to her, and perhaps that mattered even more. The fire crackled softly. Outside, snow drifted across the valley. The same snow that had fallen for centuries. The same snow that had witnessed the rise and fall of legends. The same snow that had once hidden a broken woman wandering alone through darkness. Far away, high above the valley, the cliffs of Jóra stood silent beneath the stars. No silver eyes watched from the ridges. No lonely laughter echoed through the wind. No shadow moved among the rocks. The curse was gone. The mountain was free. And so was she. Some people claimed that on rare summer evenings a woman could still be seen walking among the distant hills. Not frightening, not sorrowful, simply walking. Peacefully, a figure dressed in white, young, smiling, gone the moment one looked twice. Perhaps it was only imagination. Perhaps it was only a story. Or perhaps legends never disappear completely. Perhaps they simply change, becoming something gentler, something kinder, something worthy of remembrance. Years later, when Katil himself finally passed from the world, the people of the valley buried him beneath a hill overlooking the mountains. A simple grave, a simple stone, nothing grand, nothing unnecessary. Yet those who visited often noticed something curious. Wildflowers grew there, even in years when flowers grew nowhere else. No one could explain why. No one ever solved the mystery. But the old women smiled knowingly, and when the wind moved gently across the grass, some claimed they could hear a faint whisper. Not a warning, not a threat, a blessing, a farewell, a thank you. And so the story passed from one generation to the next, from fireside to fireside, from parent to child, from memory to memory. Not as a tale about a monster, but as a tale about hope. For every darkness, no matter how ancient, no matter how powerful, no matter how long it has ruled, can be broken. And every soul, no matter how lost, no matter how wounded, no matter how far it has wandered, can still find its way home. The end. As told by the Nordic skald